You're dead when we get home. 5 words, whispered across white linen and candlelight. 5 words that should have made Elena Cross disappear into herself like always, smaller, quieter, safer. But tonight, someone heard. A stranger at the next table with eyes like winter and a presence that could stop time. Derek Hale has controlled every breath she's taken for 3 years. Tonight, that ends. This is the story of how one dinner, one threat, and one dangerous man shattered everything Elena thought she had to survive. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The restaurant was the kind of place where silence cost extra. Cristallo. Downtown, 5th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that glittered like broken promises. The kind of establishment where waiters moved like ghosts, and every table was an island of wealth wrapped in murmured conversations and the delicate clink of crystal against porcelain. Elena Cross sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap beneath the table where Derek couldn't see them shake. She'd learned stillness the way some people learn languages, through immersion, necessity, and the bone-deep understanding that survival depended on fluency. 3 years of lessons. 3 years of reading. Wei Biaoqing S and mood shifts, of calculating every word before it left her mouth, of becoming so small she might disappear entirely. Tonight, she wore midnight blue. Derek had chosen it. He always chose. The dress fit like forgiveness, which is to say, it didn't fit at all, just held her in place and pretended that was the same thing. Her dark hair was pulled back smooth and severe. No jewelry except the diamond studs he'd given her for their first anniversary, the ones that came with a 3-hour lecture about gratitude when she'd hesitated before putting them on. Across the table, Derek Hale cut into his steak with surgical precision. He was handsome in his way that weapons are beautiful, all clean lines and controlled power. 42 years old, salt and pepper hair styled with product that cost more than most people's car payments, jaw sharp enough to cut glass. Designer suit, Swiss watch. The kind of man who looked like success and smelled like expensive cologne and unspoken threats. "You're not eating." His voice was casual, conversational. That's how Elena knew she was in trouble. She picked up her fork, managed something approximating a smile. "I am. It's delicious." "You've moved food around your plate for 15 minutes. That's not eating. That's performing." Her stomach clenched. "I'm sorry. I'm just what?" He set down his knife with deliberate care. The sound of silver meeting porcelain rang out like a verdict. "Just ungrateful? I bring you to the finest restaurant in the city, spend money most people don't see in a month, and you can't even manage to appreciate it?" "That's not... Derek, I do appreciate it. I'm just not very hungry." His eyes went flat. That was always the warning sign, the moment before the storm. When Derek's eyes went dead, bad things followed. "Not hungry," he repeated softly. "Interesting. You were hungry enough at lunch. I saw the receipt from that cafe. $12 for a sandwich. That's my money you're spending, Elena. My money on food you don't need." Her throat tightened. She'd grabbed lunch between errands because she'd skipped breakfast, because Derek had been in one of his moods that morning, and it seemed safer to leave early. The cafe had been quick, anonymous. She hadn't realized he was tracking her credit card that closely. She always realized too late. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You're right. I should have asked first. You should have thought first." He took a sip of wine, his expression pleasant again, the mask sliding back into place. To anyone watching, they looked like any other couple. Maybe he was a little intense, maybe she was a little quiet, but nothing alarming, nothing worth intervening over. That was Derek's gift, the ability to wage war in a whisper. "When we get home," he continued, voice dropping lower, intimate as a caress, "we're going to have a serious conversation about your spending habits and your attitude, and this new tendency you have of acting like you're some kind of independent woman who doesn't need to consider my feelings." Elena's fingers gripped her napkin beneath the table, twisting the linen until her knuckles went white. She knew what serious conversation meant. It meant raised voices behind closed doors. It meant her explaining and apologizing and defending while he paced and accused and cornered. It meant hours of psychological warfare until she was so turned around she couldn't remember what was true anymore. Sometimes it meant worse. "Derek, please. Not here." "Not here?" His smile was poison wrapped in charm. "You're the one making a scene, darling. I'm just trying to enjoy our anniversary dinner." Anniversary, right. 3 years since the night she'd met him at a gallery opening, when he'd seemed sophisticated and interested and safe. When she'd been 24 and stupid enough to believe that intensity meant passion and control meant care. "You're right," she managed. "I'm sorry. Let's enjoy dinner." Too late for that. He leaned forward, close enough that she could smell the wine on his breath. "You've already ruined it. You have a gift for that, ruining things. It's honestly impressive how consistently you manage to disappoint." The words landed like stones, each one carefully chosen, perfectly weighted to hit where she was already bruised. She should have stayed quiet, should have let it roll over her like all the other times. But something in her, some stupid, stubborn fragment of the woman she used to be, pushed back. "That's not fair." Derek went very still. "Excuse me?" "I said that's not fair. I didn't ruin anything. I'm sitting here, You want to talk about fair?" His voice was soft now, deadly. "Fair would be you showing an ounce of gratitude for everything I've given you. Fair would be you acting like the partner I deserve instead of some ungrateful child who can't even manage basic appreciation." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd made a mistake. She'd pushed back, and now she'd pay for it. The script was always the same. "I'm sorry," she said again, automated, the words she'd said so many times they'd lost all meaning. "You're right, I'm sorry." "You will be." Derek picked up his knife again, returned his attention to his plate as if the conversation were over. But his next words came quiet, casual, devastating. "You're dead when we get home." The world stopped. Not literally, of course. Around them, the restaurant continued its elegant performance. Waiters glided between tables. Wine glasses chimed. Conversations hummed. Somewhere, someone laughed. But for Elena, everything went silent and cold. "You're dead when we get home." He'd never said it quite like that before. Never been quite so explicit. The threat hung in the air between them like smoke from a gun. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Her entire body locked down into survival mode. That terrible, familiar place where she became a passenger in her own life, watching from somewhere far away as she nodded and smiled and prepared to endure whatever came next. She didn't see the man at the next table turn his head. Didn't notice the way his entire body language changed, casual attention sharpening into something focused and dangerous. Didn't realize that for the first time in 3 years, someone had heard. Adrian Volkov had been only half listening to the couple at the adjacent table. He'd come to Cristallo for the anonymity. Ironic, given his reputation, but high-end restaurants were useful like that. People minded their business. Staff were trained to see nothing. He could sit alone with his thoughts and a good bourbon and pretend for an hour that his life was something other than what it was. Then he'd heard it. "You're dead when we get home." The words cut through his distraction like a knife through silk. Adrian had heard a lot of threats in his 40 years. Made more than his share. He knew the difference between performance and promise, between posturing and genuine menace. This was the latter, quiet, controlled, absolute. He turned his head slightly, just enough to see them properly. The man was exactly what Adrian expected. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive sense of entitlement. Mid-40s, attractive in that aggressively maintained way certain men cultivated. The kind of man who worked out with a personal trainer and whitened his teeth and thought being rich meant being right. The woman was younger, late 20s maybe. Dark hair pulled back severe enough to hurt. Beautiful in the way that frightened animals are beautiful, all sharp edges and held breath. She wore her fear like a second skin. Adrian recognized this dynamic instantly because he'd seen it 100 times. Hell, he'd ended it a dozen. Control. Isolation. Systematic destruction of self-worth wrapped in expensive dinners and public civility. It made his blood run cold in a way that very little did anymore. He should have looked away. Should have minded his business like everyone else in this overpriced monument to willful blindness. Adrian Volkov wasn't a hero, wasn't even particularly good. He'd built his fortune on moral ambiguity and strategic violence, had made choices that kept him awake some nights and made him rich on others. But he'd always had rules, lines he didn't cross, and men who threatened women in public restaurants like it was their right. They crossed every single one. The boyfriend was still talking, voice low and controlled. The woman had gone perfectly still, eyes fixed on her plate like if she looked away the world might end. Maybe it would. Adrian made a decision. He waited. Watched. Let the moment develop. The boyfriend eventually stood, tossed his napkin on the table with theatrical irritation. I need to make a call. Try not to embarrass yourself further while I'm gone. He walked away toward the restrooms, leaving the woman alone. She sat frozen for a long moment. Then, slowly, her hands came up from beneath the table. They were shaking. Adrian stood, crossed the small distance between tables, sat down in the boyfriend's chair. Elena looked up, startled, when the stranger took Derek's seat. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't process what was happening. The man sitting across from her wasn't Derek, was nothing like Derek. Where Derek was all sharp lines and aggressive charm, this man was something else entirely. Older, early 40s maybe, dark hair with silver at the temples. Strong features that looked like they'd been carved rather than born. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Derek's, but wore it differently. Like clothing was an afterthought, a uniform required for civilian spaces. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Gray, cold, assessing. The kind of eyes that missed nothing and forgot less. I'm sorry, she managed, voice barely above a whisper. That seat's taken. I know. His voice matched his eyes, controlled, precise, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Eastern European, maybe, softened by years, but still there underneath. Your boyfriend will be back in a few minutes. This won't take long. Her heart hammered. Who are you? Someone who heard what he said to you? The world tilted. Oh no, 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 no. This couldn't happen. If Derek came back and found some stranger at their table, talking to her, sitting in his chair, you need to leave. The words came fast, panicked. Please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. He leaned forward slightly, and despite the fear flooding her system, Elena found she couldn't look away. How long has he been threatening you? That wasn't. You're dead when we get home. The stranger quoted Derek's words with perfect accuracy. That's not ambiguous, that's a threat. So I'll ask again. How long? Elena's mouth went dry. Around them, the restaurant continued its oblivious performance. No one was looking, no one cared. This man had inserted himself into her nightmare, and no one even noticed. 3 years, she heard herself say. Then, horrified, I don't know why I told you that. Because you're tired. His tone wasn't sympathetic exactly, more like stating a fact. Tired of pretending, tired of managing him, tired of being afraid. Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. You don't know anything about me? I know men like him, and I know it only gets worse. The truth of that statement hit her like a physical blow. Because he was right. It had gotten worse. So gradually, she'd barely noticed, like water boiling 1 degree at a time. The controlling had started small, preferences about her clothes, her friends, her schedule. Then it escalated. The checking her phone, the tracking her credit cards. The moods that came out of nowhere and landed like storms. The threats. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because no one else will. Simple, direct, devastating. He'll be back any second, Elena said desperately. If he finds you here, let him. The confidence in those 2 words was staggering. This man wasn't posturing, wasn't trying to impress her. He genuinely didn't fear Derek, and that was so foreign to Elena's experience she couldn't even process it. Everyone feared Derek, or at least everyone who knew what was good for them. You don't understand, she tried again. Derek, he's important. He has connections, money, influence. Something flickered in the stranger's eyes, not quite amusement. So do I. Before Elena could respond, she saw Derek's reflection in the window behind the stranger's head. He was walking back toward their table, phone in hand, expression irritated. Then he looked up and saw the stranger sitting in his chair. Everything stopped. Derek Hale had dealt with a lot of bullshit in his 42 years, but this took nerve. Some random asshole sitting at his table, talking to his girlfriend, in his chair. He crossed the remaining distance in quick strides, professional smile locked in place despite the rage building in his chest. I think you're at the wrong table, friend. The stranger didn't stand, didn't even turn around, just continued looking at Elena like Derek hadn't spoken. I said, Derek repeated, voice hardening, wrong table. I heard you. The stranger finally looked up. I'm exactly where I mean to be. Derek's hands clenched. Around them, other diners were starting to notice. Perfect. Just perfect. A scene. Exactly what he didn't need. Elena. He focused on her, letting his tone carry just enough warning. What's going on? He just sat down. I told him to leave, but I have something to say first. The stranger cut her off smoothly. He stood now, unfolding from the chair with the kind of controlled movement that Derek associated with athletes or soldiers. He was tall. Taller than Derek, broader. Derek hated him instantly. I don't know who you think you are, Derek said, keeping his voice low, civilized, but you need to walk away, now. Or what? The stranger tilted his head slightly, curious. You'll threaten me the way you threatened her? Derek's blood went cold. Excuse me? I heard what you said. Before you left the table. The stranger took a step closer. Around them, conversations died. You told her she was dead when you got home. That's an interesting thing to say to someone you supposedly care about. Panic and rage warred in Derek's chest. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not in public. That's between me and my girlfriend. It's none of your business. It became my business when you said it loud enough for me to hear. Who the hell are you? The stranger smiled then. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Adrian Volkov. The name hit Derek like cold water. No. Adrian Volkov. Jesus Christ. Everyone who was anyone in this city knew that name, knew what it meant. Real estate empire. Import/export businesses that probably imported and exported things customs would never see. Connections that ran deep into City Hall, the police department, places where sunlight didn't reach. The kind of man you didn't cross unless you had a death wish and a lawyer on retainer. Derek recalibrated immediately, forcing his expression into something apologetic, reasonable. Mr. Volkov, I apologize. This is a misunderstanding, a private matter between... It stopped being private when you made that threat. It wasn't a threat. It was... We were having an argument. Couples argue. I'm sure you understand. I understand that men who threaten women in restaurants usually do worse behind closed doors. Adrian's voice stayed level, conversational. Somehow that made it more terrifying. I understand that men like you rely on privacy and fear to maintain control. And I understand that you're about 30 seconds away from doing something we'll both regret. Derek felt his composure cracking. Around them, everyone was watching now. The maitre d' was hovering nearby, uncertain. Other diners had given up any pretense of minding their business. This was a disaster. Look, Derek tried again. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Elena and I are fine, aren't we, baby? He looked at her, really looked at her, trying to convey with his eyes what he'd say with his fists later if she didn't back him up right now. Say it. Say we're fine. Fix this. Elena's mouth opened, closed. Elena, Derek repeated, harder now. Tell him we're fine. Elena felt like she was drowning. Every eye in the restaurant was on her. Derek was staring at her with barely contained fury wrapped in that false smile. Adrian Volkov, because apparently that's who this stranger was, someone powerful enough to make Derek afraid, was watching her with those cold, assessing eyes. And she had a choice. It was the kind of choice she'd stopped believing in years ago. The kind that felt like fiction, like something that happened to other women in other stories. She could say they were fine, could smile and apologize for the misunderstanding and let Derek take her home, where he'd make her pay for this embarrassment in ways no one here would ever see. Could go back to the script, the routine, the careful performance of survival she'd mastered. Or she could tell the truth. 3 years. 3 years of being small and quiet and safe. 3 years of calculating every word, every expression, every breath. 3 years of disappearing into herself until she barely remembered who she'd been before. You're dead when we get home. The words echoed in her head, And suddenly, Elena was so tired. Tired of being afraid, tired of pretending, tired of making herself smaller so Derek could feel bigger. Just tired. She looked at Derek, really looked at him. Saw him clearly for maybe the first time. The casual cruelty, the calculated control, the absolute certainty that she belonged to him in every way that mattered. Then she looked at Adrian Volkov, at this stranger who'd stepped into her hell without invitation and refused to look away. "No," she said. The word came out quiet, barely a whisper, but it was enough. Derek's face went white, then red. "What did you say?" "No." Louder this time, stronger. "We're not fine." "Elena, we haven't been fine for a long time. Maybe we were never fine. I don't even know anymore." She was shaking. The words were coming faster now, 3 years of silence breaking like a dam. "You scare me, Derek. Every day I wake up scared of what mood you'll be in, what I'll do wrong, how I'll pay for it. I'm tired of being scared." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Derek's hand shot out, grabbed her wrist. "You're making a scene. Stop talking." "Let go of her." Adrian's voice cut through the moment like a blade. He hadn't moved, but suddenly the air around him felt dangerous. "This is none of your concern," Derek snarled. "You put your hand on her. That makes it my concern. She's my girlfriend. She's a person, and you're hurting her." Derek looked down, seemed to realize his fingers were white-knuckled around Elena's wrist. He let go like she'd burned him. It's not like that. Elena, tell him." But Elena couldn't speak anymore. The adrenaline was crashing, reality setting in. She'd done it, said the thing you weren't supposed to say, broken the fundamental rule. Never tell. And now everyone knew. Derek's expression shifted, calculation replacing rage. When he spoke again, his voice was measured, controlled. "Mr. Volkov, I appreciate your concern. Clearly, there's been some confusion. Elena is upset. I'm upset. We've both said things we don't mean. But this is between us. I'm sure you understand." "I understand you threatened to kill her." "I didn't. That's not what I meant. It's a figure of speech." "Is it?" Adrian stepped closer to Elena's chair, not touching her but making his position clear. "Then you won't mind if she doesn't go home with you tonight?" Derek's mask cracked completely. "You can't just... She's my girlfriend. You can't keep her from me." "I'm not keeping anyone from anything. I'm offering her a choice, something you apparently don't believe in." Adrian looked at Elena then. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was gentle. "You don't have to go with him. Not tonight. Not ever. If you want to leave, I'll make sure you can do it safely." Elena's breath caught. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. "Don't listen to him," Derek said urgently. "Elena, you know me. You know I'd never actually hurt you. This is crazy. We can work this out at home, like we always do." Like we always do. The words crystallized something for Elena. Because he was right. They would work it out. He'd rage and she'd apologize, and eventually things would go back to normal. The same normal that had slowly consumed her for 3 years. The same normal that had just included a death threat whispered across white linen. "I can't go home with you," she heard herself say. Derek's face went through several expressions, shock, rage, disbelief, before landing on something ugly. "You're going to regret this. I've given you everything, everything, and this is how you repay me? By believing some stranger over—" "Step back." Adrian's voice had changed. Gone was the conversational tone. This was something else, something that made Derek physically recoil. "You're going to leave now," Adrian continued, each word precise as a scalpel. "You're going to walk out of this restaurant quietly. And you're not going to contact Elena again. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever." "Or what? You'll what? You think because you're Adrian Volkov you can just—" Adrian smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Elena had ever seen. "You should probably stop talking now," Adrian said softly, "before you say something that makes this personal." For a long moment, Derek seemed to weigh his options. Elena could see the calculations running behind his eyes, pride versus survival, ego versus self-preservation. Finally, survival won. "This isn't over," Derek said, directing the words at Elena. "You think you're scared now? You have no idea what scared is. When he loses interest, when you realize what you've thrown away, don't come crying back to me. She won't, Adrian said. Derek shot him a look of pure hatred, then turned and walked toward the exit. Every eye in the restaurant tracked his movement. When the door closed behind him, the silence broke into immediate whispered conversations. Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her entire life had just imploded in the middle of Cristallo, and she couldn't even process what that meant. You're safe. She looked up. Adrian was watching her with those calm, assessing eyes. I don't feel safe, she whispered. I feel like I just jumped off a cliff. You did, but at least you jumped. That takes courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. The maitre d' approached then, expression carefully neutral. Mr. Volkov, I apologize for the disturbance. If there's anything... We're leaving, Adrian said. Put both meals on my account. Of course, sir. Adrian looked at Elena. Do you have a coat? She nodded numbly. He signaled the coat check, and a moment later her jacket appeared. He helped her into it with the kind of automatic courtesy that suggested he'd been raised a certain way, in a different era. Where are we going? Elena asked. Somewhere you can breathe. He offered his arm. After a moment's hesitation, Elena took it. Together, they walked out of Cristallo and into the night. Behind them, the restaurant erupted into speculation and gossip that would fuel conversations for weeks. Ahead of them, everything was uncertain. But for the first time in 3 years, Elena Cross had chosen something for herself. And that, terrifyingly, felt like freedom. The city looked different from Adrian Volkov's car. Elena sat in the passenger seat of what was probably an obscenely expensive vehicle. She didn't know cars well enough to identify it, just knew that the interior was leather and the engine purred rather than rumbled, and watched the city slide past the window. They'd been driving for 10 minutes in silence. Adrian hadn't asked where she lived, where she wanted to go, what she needed. He'd simply opened the passenger door, waited for her to get in, and started driving. Normally, that would terrify her. Getting into a stranger's car, going to an unknown destination. But her capacity for fear seemed to have maxed out somewhere around the moment she'd said no to Derek in front of 50 witnesses. Now she just felt numb, disconnected, like she was watching all of this happen to someone else. Where are we going? She finally asked. Somewhere safe while we figure out your next move. My next move? She almost laughed. I don't have a next move. I just blew up my entire life in the middle of a restaurant. Good. She turned to look at him. Good? Your life with him wasn't a life. It was a prison sentence. Adrian took a corner smoothly. Blowing it up was long overdue. You don't know that. You don't know me. I know enough. Elena's hands twisted in her lap. He's going to come after me. You don't understand. Derek doesn't lose. He doesn't let go. He'll... Let him try. The absolute confidence in those 3 words should have been absurd. But something in Adrian's tone made Elena believe him. Made her think maybe, possibly, Derek had finally encountered something he couldn't control. Who are you? She asked. Really? I mean, I know your name, but who are you that Derek Hale looks at you like? Like I'm dangerous? Adrian glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. Because I am. Elena's breath caught. Most people would have denied it, softened it. Adrian stated it like a fact, like telling her the sky was blue. Should I be afraid of you? Probably. Most people are. But not tonight. Not tonight, he agreed. Tonight I'm on your side. Tomorrow too, if you want. Why? Why what? Why help me? You don't know me. I'm nothing to you. Why step in? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. The city lights played across his features, turning them into something carved and ancient. I knew someone once, he said finally. Long time ago. Different country, different life. She was in a situation like yours, and no one helped her. Everyone saw. Everyone knew. No one did anything. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. By the time I understood what was happening, it was too late. I couldn't save her. But I promised myself, if I ever saw it again, if I ever had the chance to step in, I would. Every single time, no exceptions. The raw honesty in his voice made Elena's throat tighten. What happened to her? She died. He killed her, and everyone pretended to be shocked, like they hadn't watched it happen in slow motion for years. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be alive. Be free. That's the only thing that matters. They drove in silence for another few minutes before Adrian pulled into an underground parking garage. Exclusive building, downtown. The kind of place where security cameras watched every angle and doormen remembered faces. This is my building, Adrian said, putting the car in park. I have a guest suite on the 20th floor. It's private, secure. You can stay there tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out logistics. Getting your things, finding you somewhere permanent, dealing with Derek if he makes the mistake of reaching out. Elena stared at the concrete pillars of the parking garage. I can't just stay at your place. Why not? Because I don't know you. Because this is insane. Because 3 hours ago I was having dinner with my boyfriend and now I'm free. Adrian finished. You're free. And yes, it's insane. Yes, you don't know me. Yes, this is probably the most reckless thing you've ever done. But staying with him was slow suicide. At least this way you're choosing your own risk. He had a point. A terrifying, undeniable point. What if he comes here? He won't get past the lobby. I own this building. My security team knows who's allowed up and who isn't. You're safe here. Elena looked at him. Really looked at him, trying to see past the expensive suit and the dangerous reputation to whatever was underneath. You said you were dangerous. I am. How dangerous? Adrian met her eyes. Dangerous enough that Derek Hale will think very carefully before trying anything. Dangerous enough that most people in this city know better than to cross me. Dangerous enough that if I tell you you're safe, you can believe it. And what do you want in return? Nothing. Everyone wants something. Then I want you to have the chance that woman I knew never got. I want you to walk away from this and build a life that's actually yours. That's it. That's all I want. Elena searched his face for deception, manipulation, hidden agenda, found only steady certainty. Maybe she was being stupid. Maybe this was trading one dangerous man for another. Maybe in a week she'd regret every choice she'd made tonight, but Derek's voice was still echoing in her head. You're dead when we get home. And at least Adrian Volkov had never threatened to kill her. At least he'd given her a choice. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I'll stay tonight, just tonight, and tomorrow I'll figure out what comes next. Adrian nodded. Fair enough. He got out of the car, came around to open her door. The courtesy still felt strange. Derek had stopped opening doors for her about 6 months into their relationship. They took a private elevator to the 20th floor. The hallway was silent, carpeted, expensive. Adrian unlocked a door near the end and gestured her inside. The guest suite was bigger than her and Derek's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a kitchen area, living space, separate bedroom. Everything was pristine, impersonal, clearly unused. Make yourself at home, Adrian said. There's food in the kitchen, toiletries in the bathroom. I'm on the 22nd floor if you need anything. My number is programmed into the house phone. Just press 1. You're leaving? Unless you want me to stay? He raised an eyebrow. But I'm guessing you could use some space to process everything. He was right. She needed to think, to breathe, to figure out what the hell she'd just done. Thank you, Elena said, for everything, for stepping in, for this. I don't even know how to... Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow, Derek is going to start making moves. He's going to try to get you back, and when that doesn't work, he's going to try to hurt you. Men like him always do. So what do I do? You let me handle it. You focus on taking care of yourself, and you remember that you're stronger than you think. You proved that tonight. He moved toward the door, then paused. Elena? One more thing. Yes? What you did tonight, refusing to go home with him, choosing to leave, that took more courage than you know. A lot of women in your situation never make it out. You did. Don't forget that, and don't let him make you doubt it. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Elena stood alone in the pristine guest suite, the city glittering through the windows, her entire life rearranged in the space of an evening. She should have been terrified, should have been doubting everything. Instead, she walked to the window and looked out at the city below. The same city she'd looked at from Cristallo, but different now. Changed. For the first time in 3 years, Elena Cross was alone. Truly, completely alone. And instead of fear, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. It was fragile, uncertain, probably stupid, but it was hers, and for tonight, that was enough. Elena didn't sleep. She'd tried. Changed into the oversized shirt she found in the guest bedroom dresser, still wrapped in plastic, tags attached, like everything in this place existed in pristine suspension, waiting for someone to claim it. Lay down in the king-sized bed with its hotel-quality sheets and stared at the ceiling while the city hummed 20 floors below. But sleep felt impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Derek's face, the rage barely contained behind his professional mask, the way his hand had clamped around her wrist, the promise in his voice when he'd said, "This isn't over." He was right. It wasn't over. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up and moved to the living room windows. The city sprawled beneath her in ribbons of light, highways and high-rises, late-night traffic, and illuminated office buildings where people worked shifts that didn't conform to daylight. Somewhere out there was the apartment she'd shared with Derek. Her clothes, her books, the small pieces of herself she'd managed to keep, despite his systematic erasure of everything that made her Elena instead of Derek's girlfriend. She'd have to go back for them eventually. Face him again. The thought made her stomach turn. Her phone sat on the coffee table where she'd left it, screen dark. She'd turned it off in the car, some instinct telling her that Derek would try to reach her, and she wasn't ready for that conversation. Wasn't sure she'd ever be ready. But avoidance wasn't a strategy. It was just postponement. Elena picked up the phone, held it in both hands like something that might detonate. Then, with a breath that felt like jumping off that cliff all over again, she turned it on. The screen lit up. Messages flooded in, notification after notification. Weeks of communication compressed into 30 seconds of buzzing. 43 missed calls. All Derek. 27 text messages. All Derek, 6 voicemails. She didn't need to check to know who they were from. Her hands shook as she opened the messages. They'd come in waves, each wave darker than the last. The first few were almost reasonable. Concerned boyfriend worried about his girlfriend who'd left without explanation. "Elena, where are you? Call me. This is ridiculous. We need to talk. You can't just disappear. I'm worried." Then the concern curdled into something uglier. "You're making a huge mistake. That man is dangerous. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Everything you have is because of me. Everything. You're going to regret this." And finally, around 2 a.m., the mask came off completely. "You stupid bitch. You think you can just walk away? You think Volkov gives a shit about you? He's using you to fuck with me, and you're too stupid to see it. When this blows up in your face, and it will, don't come crawling back. You're nothing without me. Nothing. I made you, and I can destroy you." Elena's vision blurred. She told herself it was just fatigue, just the sleepless night catching up with her. But the tears came anyway, hot and angry and 3 years overdue. This was Derek without the performance, without the public civility. This was who he'd always been behind closed doors, and she'd convinced herself it was normal. That all relationships had this edge, that love was supposed to hurt sometimes. She'd been so stupid. A knock on the door made her jump, phone clattering to the floor. "Elena?" Adrian's voice muffled through the door. "I saw your lights on. Everything all right?" She wiped her face quickly, tried to compose herself. Failed completely. When she opened the door, she knew her eyes were red, her face blotchy. Adrian stood in the hallway wearing dark pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked like he'd been awake for hours. Maybe he had. His eyes went to her face, then to the phone on the floor behind her. Understanding crossed his features. "He's been calling," he said. Not a question. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. "May I?" Adrian gestured to the phone. She should have said no, should have maintained some boundary, some scrap of privacy. Instead, she stepped aside and let him enter. Adrian picked up the phone, scrolled through the messages with an expression that grew progressively colder. When he finished, he set it down carefully, deliberately, like he was restraining himself from throwing it through the window. "This is textbook," he said quietly. "Escalation, trying to regain control, making you doubt yourself and your choices." "He's right, though." Elena's voice cracked. About some of it, I don't know you. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I am making a mistake. The only mistake you made was staying with him as long as you did. You don't understand. Derek, he wasn't always like this. In the beginning, he was different, charming and attentive, and they always are. Adrian cut her off gently but firmly. In the beginning, that's how it works. They're everything you ever wanted until they have you. And then slowly, so slowly you don't notice, they become your worst nightmare. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. How do you know so much about this? I told you I knew someone. The woman who died. Yes. What was her name? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old grief, the kind that never quite healed. Katya. Her name was Katya. Were you... Elena hesitated. Were you together? My sister. The words landed heavy in the quiet apartment. Elena's breath caught. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. It's all right. It was a long time ago. Different country, different life. I was young, stupid, building my way up through organizations that didn't ask questions about methods. She was older, beautiful, believed she could save everyone. Adrian moved to the windows, looked out at the same city Elena had been watching. She met him at a party. Sophisticated man, successful. Treated her like royalty. 6 months later, she was isolated from everyone who loved her. A year after that, she was making excuses for bruises. 2 years, and we were planning her funeral. What happened? He beat her to death in their apartment, called it an accident, said she fell. The police believed him because he was respectable, and she was just some immigrant sister with a history of being difficult. The bitterness in Adrian's voice was decades old and fresh as yesterday. I couldn't do anything. I had no power, no connections, no way to make him pay. So I built those things, spent 20 years building them, making sure that next time, if there was a next time, I could stop it. He turned back to face Elena. Tonight was that next time. And I'm not letting him win. Not again. Elena felt something crack open in her chest. For 3 years, she'd been alone in this. Alone with the fear and the shame and the careful performance of normalcy. Now standing in this borrowed apartment with this dangerous stranger who'd stepped into her nightmare without hesitation, she realized she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone on her side. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Just promise me something. What? Don't go back to him. No matter what he says, what he promises, what he threatens. Men like Derek don't change. They just get better at hiding it. I won't. I can't. Even if I wanted to, I don't think I could survive it. Good. Then we move forward, starting now. Adrian crossed to the kitchen area, started making coffee with the efficiency of someone who'd done this countless times. The domesticity of it was jarring against everything else he was. The dangerous reputation, the calculated violence lurking behind civilized manners. We need a plan, he said, measuring coffee grounds. Derek will escalate. The messages are just the beginning. Next, he'll try to contact you directly, show up at places you frequent, use mutual friends to get information. I don't have many friends anymore. Elena stopped, the realization hitting her freshly. He made sure I didn't. Classic isolation tactic, makes you dependent, easier to control. So we'll assume he has limited avenues for direct contact, but he knows where you work, yes? Elena nodded. She was a graphic designer for a small marketing firm downtown. Decent job, creative work, something she'd loved before Derek started criticizing every project, every late night, every colleague who showed her basic kindness. You'll need to take some time off, use sick days, vacation, whatever you have. I can make calls if your employer needs convincing. I can't just not show up. I have deadlines, clients. Elena. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. Derek knows where you work. He will show up there. And when he does, he'll make a scene designed to embarrass you into compliance, or he'll wait until you're leaving and corner you in the parking garage. Either way, you're vulnerable, so you take time off. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the apartment with the smell of fresh brew. Normal, domestic, completely at odds with the conversation. What about my things? Elena asked. My clothes, my laptop, everything I own is in that apartment. We'll get them, but not tonight. Let him cool down. Let him think he still has leverage. In a few days, we'll arrange a police escort and you can collect your belongings. Police escort? For moving out? Trust me, you want witnesses, documentation, a record that you left safely and he had no grounds to claim you're unstable or making things up. Adrian poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one. She wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, grateful for something to hold on to. This feels insane, she said. Like I'm in a movie. Police escorts and protection, and it's reality for thousands of women every day. You're just seeing it clearly now instead of pretending it's normal. He was right. She knew he was right. But knowing didn't make it easier. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and watching the city wake up. Around 5:30, the sky started to lighten, black fading to deep blue to pale gray. Early commuters appeared on the streets below, lives in motion, while Elena's had frozen in the middle of a restaurant. "What do I do now?" she asked finally. "Like, today. This morning. I can't just sit here." "Actually, you can. You need rest. Real rest, not whatever you've been doing the last 3 years. Sleep, eat. Let yourself process what happened." "I don't know how to process this. I don't even know where to start." Adrian studied her for a moment, those gray eyes seeing more than she wanted to reveal. "Start by accepting that leaving took courage, that you made the right choice. Everything else can wait." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to feel brave instead of terrified, strong instead of shattered. But all she felt was hollow. Her phone buzzed, another message from Derek. Adrian reached over, picked it up. "May I?" She nodded. He read the message, expression darkening. Then, without asking permission, he blocked Derek's number, blocked him on every messaging platform, set up filters to send anything from him straight to spam. "Hey," Elena started to protest, "you don't need to read his poison. If he has something legitimate to say, he can say it through lawyers. Everything else is manipulation." "What if it's important?" "It's not. It's never important. It's designed to keep you engaged, keep you doubting, keep you under his control. The only way to break that cycle is to cut all contact." Elena's chest tightened. "That feels cruel." "He threatened to kill you. Cruel is relative." The bluntness shocked a laugh out of her. Horrible, inappropriate, but real. "This is insane," she said again. "Yes, but you're handling it. That counts for something." The sky continued to lighten. Soon the city would be fully awake, people rushing to jobs and meetings and lives that made sense. Elena couldn't imagine returning to that world. Couldn't picture herself going through normal motions when everything inside her had fundamentally changed. "I should let you get back to whatever," she gestured vaguely. "Whatever you do at 5 in the morning." "I was working, conference call with associates in Europe, different time zones." "Associates?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "That's a very polite word." Adrian's mouth quirked, almost a smile. "I run legitimate businesses. Real estate, import-export, investments. All very legal, very boring. But I also have connections that aren't boring. Resources that exist in gray areas. Friends who don't ask questions when I need favors. Like protection from abusive ex-boyfriends." Exactly like that. Elena should have been frightened, should have seen the red flags waving frantically. Instead, she felt safer than she had in years. Maybe that made her crazy. Maybe she was trading one dangerous situation for another. But at least Adrian was honest about what he was. Derek had hidden his violence behind civility, made her feel crazy for being afraid. Adrian named his danger and gave her the choice to stay or go. That felt like a gift. "Get some rest," Adrian said, standing. "Real rest. I'll be upstairs if you need anything." "And Elena?" "Yes?" "You did the hardest part already. Everything else is just logistics." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Elena sat alone with her coffee and the rising sun and the wreckage of her old life scattered across a phone screen. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't have to ask permission to exist. And terrifying as that was, it also felt like breathing. She finished her coffee, turned off all the lights, and finally managed to sleep. When she woke, it was past noon. Her phone showed no new messages because Adrian had blocked them all. The apartment was silent, except for the ambient hum of the city outside. Elena stood under the shower for 20 minutes, letting hot water wash away the previous night's fear. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, she felt almost human. There were clothes in the dresser. Women's clothes, various sizes, still tagged. Like Adrian kept a whole inventory of things guests might need. She tried not to think too hard about that, just found jeans and a sweater that fit well enough and got dressed. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked strange. Same face, same dark eyes, but something had shifted. Some fundamental resignation had cracked, letting in possibilities she'd stopped believing in. She looked alive. The realization made her cry again, quiet tears that felt like release instead of breaking. When she was finished, she dried her face, squared her shoulders, and decided to stop hiding. She found her way to the kitchen, discovered the refrigerator fully stocked, and made herself an actual meal. Not the careful portions Derek monitored, not the foods he'd decided were acceptable, just whatever looked good. It was such a small act of rebellion, it felt monumental. She was eating when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Elena Cross? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Yes, who is this? My name is Sarah Chen. I'm an attorney. Adrian Volkov asked me to reach out regarding your situation with Derek Hale. Elena's hand tightened on the phone. I didn't ask for a lawyer. I understand, but you'll need one. Mr. Volkov has retained my services on your behalf to handle the legal aspects of your separation, restraining orders, property division, any harassment issues that arise. I can't afford... You're not paying. Mr. Volkov is handling all costs. Consider it part of his commitment to ensuring your safety. Elena didn't know whether to feel grateful or overwhelmed. That's very generous, but I can't accept... Ms. Cross. Sarah's voice was kind but firm. I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've seen what happens when women try to navigate these situations alone, especially against men with resources and connections. Derek Hale has both. You need someone in your corner who knows how to fight that battle. And you do? I specialize in domestic violence cases. I've gone up against powerful men before and won. Adrian knows this, which is why he called me. So let me ask you directly, do you want protection from Derek Hale, or do you want to handle this yourself? Elena thought about the messages, the threats, Derek's face when she'd refused to go home with him. I want protection. Good. Then we'll file for a restraining order this afternoon. I'll need you to document everything, messages, calls, any history of threatening behavior or violence. Can you do that? Yes. I have photos. From before, times when... Elena's voice caught. When he hurt me. That's good. That's evidence. We'll use it. I'll send a car to pick you up in 2 hours. We'll meet at my office, go through everything, and get the paperwork filed today. Today? That fast? The faster we move, the less time he has to escalate. Trust me on this. After they hung up, Elena sat staring at her half-eaten lunch. Things were moving so quickly. Yesterday she'd been trapped. Today she had a lawyer, a safe place to stay, and a dangerous man running interference. It felt too good to be real. Like any moment she'd wake up and discover it was all fantasy, that she was still sitting across from Derek at Cristallo, still frozen in fear. But her phone was real. The apartment was real. The lawyer was real. And for the first time, Elena let herself believe that maybe she could actually get out. The car arrived exactly 2 hours later. Professional driver, nondescript sedan, the kind of service that cost money Elena didn't have, but Adrian apparently did. Sarah Chen's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel, and the kind of quiet competence that came with success. Sarah herself was 40-something, sharp-featured, with intelligent eyes and handshake that conveyed strength without showmanship. Thank you for coming, she said, leading Elena to a conference room. I know this is overwhelming. That's an understatement, Sarah smiled sympathetically. We'll take it step by step. First, I need you to tell me everything. Start from the beginning. How you met Derek, when the behavior started, every incident you can remember. So Elena told her, all of it. The charming beginning, the gradual isolation, the controlling behavior that escalated so slowly she'd barely noticed. The first time he'd grabbed her hard enough to leave bruises. The names he called her. The way he monitored her phone, her credit cards, her every movement. The threats. Sarah took notes, asked clarifying questions, never once looked shocked or skeptical. This was her job. She'd heard it all before. And last night? Sarah prompted. At the restaurant? Elena recounted it. Derek's threat, Adrian's intervention, her decision to leave. How many witnesses were there? I don't know. The restaurant was full. Maybe 50 people? Good. Public witnesses. That strengthens our case. Sarah made another note. Now, the messages. Let me see your phone. Elena handed it over. Sarah scrolled through the blocked messages, screenshot everything. This is clear harassment, threatening language, controlling behavior, explicit statements of intent to harm. Combined with your documented history of abuse, we have strong grounds for a restraining order. How strong? Strong enough that he'll be legally barred from contacting you, coming within 500 feet of you, or attempting any form of communication. If he violates it, he goes to jail. No questions, no excuses. The relief was dizzying. When? We'll file today. Emergency hearing tomorrow morning. If the judge agrees, and with this evidence they will, the temporary order goes into effect immediately. Full hearing in 2 weeks for the permanent order. What about my things? My apartment? We'll include a provision allowing you supervised access to retrieve your belongings. Police will accompany you. He won't be able to stop you or threaten you. He's going to be furious. Let him be furious from a legal distance. Sarah's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Men like Derek rely on fear and access. We're removing both. Without those tools, he's just another bully with good lawyers. He does have good lawyers. So do you. And I'm better. The confidence in Sarah's voice made Elena believe her. They spent another hour going through details, filling out paperwork, building the case. By the time they finished, Elena felt wrung out, but strangely empowered. One more thing, Sarah said as they wrapped up. Adrian mentioned you might need employment assistance, time off from work while this gets sorted. I can't just abandon my job. You can take emergency leave. I can draft a letter to your employer explaining the situation, vaguely protecting your privacy, and recommending temporary accommodation. Most companies cooperate when lawyers get involved. This is all so much. I don't even know how to thank me by staying safe, by not backing down when Derek tries to manipulate you back, by building the life you deserve. Sarah walked her to the elevator. Adrian Volkov is a complicated man, she said carefully, but he's serious about protecting you. I've known him for years. When he commits to something, he doesn't waver. You're safe with him. Everyone keeps saying that, but he admitted he's dangerous. He is, very, but not to you. There's a difference. The elevator arrived. Elena stepped inside, turned back. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why does someone like Adrian Volkov keep someone like you on retainer? Domestic violence isn't exactly, she gestured vaguely, Mafia lawyer territory. Sarah's smile was sad. Because 20 years ago, his sister needed someone like me and couldn't find one. Now he makes sure that never happens again, to anyone. The doors closed before Elena could respond. She rode down in silence, processing everything. The lawyer, the restraining order, the systematic dismantling of Derek's power over her life. It felt too easy. Like there should be more obstacles, more fight. But maybe that was the point. Maybe escaping didn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it could just be methodical, professional, supported. Maybe she didn't have to do this alone. The driver took her back to Adrian's building. The security guard nodded as she passed, already familiar with her face, already tracking her as someone who belonged. When had that happened? When had she started belonging somewhere again? She went back to the guest suite, ordered dinner from a restaurant she'd always wanted to try, but Derek had deemed too casual. Ate until she was full instead of stopping at the portion he'd decided was appropriate. Around 8, there was a knock on the door. Adrian stood in the hallway, dressed down now in jeans and a black sweater, looking less like a dangerous businessman and more like someone who might be normal. How'd it go with Sarah? Good. Really good. We're filing tomorrow. She's excellent. You're in good hands. I know. Thank you. For everything. I keep saying that, but you don't need to thank me. Adrian cut her off gently. Just keep moving forward. That's all that matters. They stood in the doorway, the moment stretching. Would you like to come in? Elena heard herself ask. I ordered way too much food. Adrian hesitated, and Elena realized this was the first time she'd seen him uncertain about anything. You don't have to, she added quickly. I just thought, you've been alone up there, and I've been alone down here, and it seems stupid when we could. I'd like that, Adrian said. So he came in, and they sat at the dining table with containers of Thai food spread between them, and for the first time since Cristallo, Elena felt something approaching normal. They didn't talk about Derek, didn't talk about restraining orders or danger or the future. Instead, Adrian told her about his businesses, the legitimate ones, the boring details of real estate acquisition and market trends. Elena told him about graphic design, about the projects she loved and the ones she'd hated, about the career she'd almost abandoned because Derek made everything about her work feel small. It was easy, comfortable, strange. Can I ask you something? Elena said eventually. Always. Why aren't you married? Someone like you, successful, powerful. I'd think you'd have a wife who tolerates me for the money? Adrian's smile was wry. I've tried relationships. They don't work. My world is too complicated, too dangerous. Most people can't handle it. But you handle it. I was born into it, raised in it. It's different when you choose this life versus having it chosen for you. And yet you're helping me, bringing me into your complicated, dangerous world. Temporarily, until you're safe. Then you'll go build your own life, one that has nothing to do with mine. Something in his tone made Elena's chest tighten, like he was already preparing for her to leave, like he expected it. Maybe everyone left Adrian Volkov eventually. Maybe that was the price of being dangerous. Well, Elena said softly, for what it's worth, thank you for letting me into your complicated, dangerous world, even temporarily. Adrian met her eyes across the table. For a moment, something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression shifting. What is it? Derek. He just tried to access your apartment building. Security turned him away. Elena's stomach dropped. He went there? Probably expected you to go back. When you didn't, he wanted to make sure you weren't there. Adrian was already texting. I'm having security increase patrols. He won't get close again. This is really happening. He's really escalating. Yes. Which is why we move fast with the lawyer. Tomorrow, the restraining order goes into effect. After that, if he tries this again, he goes to jail. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. I knew he wouldn't let go. I knew it. But now you have protection. Legal protection. And me. The confidence in Adrian's voice should have seemed arrogant. Instead, it felt like a promise. They finished dinner. Adrian helped her clean up, another small domestic act that felt enormous. When he left, Elena locked the door and stood in the silent apartment processing the day. Tomorrow, the restraining order. Tomorrow, legal protection. Tomorrow, another step toward freedom. Tonight, she'd survived another day away from Derek. And that, impossible as it seemed, felt like victory. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and fear. Elena sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, hands folded in her lap to hide the shaking. Sarah Chen sat beside her, professional and composed in a charcoal suit, reviewing documents with the kind of calm that came from doing this 100 times before. For Sarah, this was routine. For Elena, it felt like walking into battle. He'll be here, Sarah said without looking up. Derek will show up, they always do. Try to look sympathetic, play the victim, convince the judge this is all a misunderstanding. What if the judge believes him? They won't. We have evidence, documentation, witness statements from the restaurant, his own text messages threatening you. Sarah finally looked at her. Trust me, you're going to walk out of here with that restraining order. Elena wanted to believe her, wanted to feel the confidence Sarah radiated like armor. Instead, she felt exposed, vulnerable, like standing in front of Derek and a judge and God and everyone to say out loud that she'd been abused was stripping herself naked in public. The shame was irrational. She knew that intellectually. She was the victim. She hadn't done anything wrong. But 3 years of Derek's voice in her head telling her she was dramatic, oversensitive, making things up. It was hard to silence that chorus even now. Ms. Chen? A bailiff appeared. Judge Morrison is ready for you. Sarah stood, helped Elena to her feet. Remember, answer questions directly. Don't elaborate unless asked. If you need a break, tell me. and whatever happens in there, I've got you." They walked into the courtroom together. It was smaller than Elena expected. No jury box, no gallery of spectators, just the judge's bench, a few tables, fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly jaundiced. And Derek. He sat at the opposite table with his lawyer, a man in his 60s wearing a suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months. Derek looked perfect, of course. Suit pressed, hair styled, expression carefully arranged into confused concern. When his eyes met Elena's, something flickered beneath the mask. Rage. Pure, cold rage. Then it was gone, replaced by wounded confusion. The performance was flawless. Elena's stomach turned. She'd seen that look before. The one he showed the world versus the one he showed her behind closed doors. How many people had seen him like this and thought she was crazy for being afraid? "All rise." Judge Morrison entered, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and the kind of face that had seen everything and been impressed by none of it. She took her seat, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the file before her. Case number 47823, Elena Cross versus Derek Hale. Petition for emergency restraining order. She looked up. "Miss Chen, you're representing the petitioner?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mr. Berkowitz for the respondent?" Derek's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Very well. Ms. Chen, present your case." Sarah stood, moved to the podium with the kind of controlled grace that came from knowing exactly what she was doing. "Your Honor, my client Elena Cross is seeking an emergency restraining order against Derek Hale based on a 3-year pattern of escalating abuse, threats, and controlling behavior that culminated 2 nights ago in a public death threat." Derek's lawyer was already on his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. Death threat is inflammatory and inaccurate." "I'll allow it," Judge Morrison said dryly. "Continue, Ms. Chen." Sarah walked the judge through everything. The timeline of abuse, the isolation, the controlling behavior, the text messages, the restaurant incident with 50 witnesses. Elena listened to her own life reduced to legal terminology. Systematic psychological abuse, financial control, credible threat of violence. It should have felt impersonal. Instead, it felt validating. Someone was finally naming what had happened to her in a way that made it real, made it not her fault. "I'd like to call Ms. Cross to testify," Sarah said. Elena stood on legs that felt like water. The bailiff swore her in. She sat in the witness box, hands gripped together, very aware of Derek's eyes on her. "Ms. Cross," Sarah began gently, "can you tell the court how you met Derek Hale?" Elena's throat was dry. "At a gallery opening, 3 years ago. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted." "And when did his behavior change?" "Gradually. It started with small things, suggesting what I should wear, who I should spend time with. It seemed caring at first, like he just wanted what was best for me. But it escalated." "Yes." Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. "He started monitoring my phone, my credit cards. He'd get angry if I went anywhere without telling him exactly where I'd be, who I'd be with, what time I'd be home." "Did he ever hurt you physically?" Elena's hands tightened. This was it, the moment of truth. "Yes." Derek shifted in his seat. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. "Can you describe an incident for the court?" "Last year, around May. I was late coming home from work because of a project deadline. He was angry, said I was probably cheating on him, that I was lying. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises, twisted it behind my back, and told me if I ever lied to him again, I'd regret it." "Do you have documentation of these injuries?" "Yes." "I took photos. I kept them hidden on a cloud account he didn't know about." Sarah submitted the photos into evidence. Elena didn't look as the judge examined them, couldn't bear to see her own bruises displayed like evidence at a crime scene. "And 2 nights ago," Sarah continued, "at the restaurant, what happened?" Elena recounted it. Derek's coldness, the escalating argument, the threat. "He said, 'You're dead when we get home,' in front of dozens of witnesses. And I realized," her voice cracked, "I realized he meant it, that one day he would actually hurt me badly enough that I wouldn't walk away." "What did you do?" "I left. A stranger at the next table heard everything and intervened. He made sure I could leave safely, and I did. I chose to leave." "And since then, has Derek attempted to contact you?" 43 times. Calls, texts, voicemails. At first, he was apologetic, then angry, then threatening. He also showed up at my apartment building last night. Security turned him away. Sarah returned to the evidence table. Your Honor, I'd like to submit the defendant's text messages. They clearly demonstrate a pattern of harassment, threats, and escalating behavior consistent with Ms. Cross's testimony. The judge reviewed them in silence. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture stiffened. Mr. Berkowitz, she said finally, your client wants to respond to these allegations? Derek's lawyer stood. Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to hear from Mr. Hale directly. Derek stood, all wounded dignity and controlled confusion. He was perfect at this. Elena had watched him talk his way out of everything from traffic tickets to business disputes. He knew exactly how to play the role of reasonable man falsely accused. Your Honor, he began, voice steady and sincere, I understand how this looks, but Elena and I, we've been together 3 years. We love each other. We have arguments like any couple. Sometimes things get heated, but I would never hurt her. The photographs suggest otherwise. Those photos are from a year ago. Elena bruises easily. I may have grabbed her arm during an argument, but I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to get her to listen to me. The rationalization made Elena's skin crawl. How many times had she heard similar explanations? How many times had she believed them? And the text messages, Judge Morrison continued, the ones where you called Ms. Cross vulgar names and threatened to destroy her? I was angry. She left in the middle of our anniversary dinner with a man I've never met, a man with a dangerous reputation. I was worried about her safety. And yes, I said things I regret. But that's not abuse, Your Honor. That's concern. And the statement at the restaurant, you're dead when we get home? Derek's expression flickered, just for a second. Then he recovered. It's a figure of speech. I was frustrated. It didn't mean I would never actually harm Elena. The idea is absurd. 50 witnesses heard you make that threat, Sarah interjected, including Adrian Volkov, who's willing to testify if needed. Derek's jaw tightened. Adrian Volkov is a criminal. Everyone knows what he is. And Elena, she's clearly being manipulated by him. She's vulnerable, confused. He saw an opportunity to what? Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. To fabricate 3 years of documented abuse? To fake photographs? To somehow force your client to send threatening text messages? Your Honor, Derek's lawyer stood quickly. My client is simply trying to explain. I've heard enough, Judge Morrison cut him off. Ms. Cross, you may step down. Elena returned to her seat on shaking legs. Sarah gave her hand a quick, reassuring squeeze. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly, deliberately. The courtroom was silent except for the hum of ventilation and the tick of the wall clock. I've been presiding over cases like this for 15 years, she said finally, and I've learned to recognize patterns. Mr. Hale, your testimony follows a predictable script, minimizing, justifying, blaming the victim. The evidence, however, tells a different story. Derek's face went carefully blank. The photographs alone would be sufficient for a restraining order. Combined with the documented pattern of controlling behavior, the threats, and the witness testimony from the restaurant, this is one of the clearer cases I've seen. She looked directly at Derek. Mr. Hale, I'm granting Miss Cross's petition. You are hereby ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from her at all times. You may not contact her directly or through third parties. You may not go to her workplace, her residence, or any location where you know she will be. This order is effective immediately and will remain in place pending a full hearing in 2 weeks. Your Honor, Derek started. I'm not finished. The text messages you sent constitute clear harassment and possibly criminal threatening. I'm forwarding copies to the district attorney's office for review. If you violate this order in any way at all, you will be arrested and held without bail. Do you understand? Derek's hands clenched on the table. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Ms. Cross, I'm also granting you supervised access to retrieve your belongings from the shared residence. The Sheriff's Department will coordinate a time for you to collect your property. Mr. Hale will not be present. Elena could barely breathe. She'd won. Actually won. This hearing is concluded. Judge Morrison stood. Mr. Hale, I suggest you take this order very seriously. Ms. Cross, I hope this gives you the safety you need to rebuild your life. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sound like finality. Derek stood frozen as the judge left. Then, slowly, he turned to look at Elena. The mask was gone completely now. What remained was pure hatred. This isn't over, he mouthed silently. Sarah was immediately between them, blocking his view. Don't engage, let's go. She ushered Elena out of the courtroom quickly, professionally. They didn't stop until they were outside the building, standing in the weak morning sunlight. You did it, Sarah said. It's done. Elena couldn't speak. The relief was overwhelming, crushing, perfect. She'd stood in front of a judge and told the truth and been believed. Derek had tried his usual manipulation and failed. For the first time in 3 years, someone with power had looked at her situation and said, yes, this is abuse. Yes, you deserve protection. Yes, you matter. What happens now? She managed finally. Now? You live your life. Derek stays away or goes to jail. We'll handle the full hearing in 2 weeks, make the order permanent, and in the meantime, you're free. Free. The word felt foreign, dangerous, like something she didn't deserve. What if he violates the order? Then he gets arrested. Elena, I mean it. You won. This is real legal protection. He can't hurt you anymore. A car pulled up to the curb, not the driver from before. This was Adrian's car, the expensive one from the night at Cristallo. Adrian himself was behind the wheel. He got out, came around to where Elena stood. His eyes scanned her face, reading everything she couldn't say. How'd it go? She got the order, Sarah said. Effective immediately. Something in Adrian's expression eased. Good. I'll be in touch about the property retrieval, Sarah told Elena. Probably this weekend. In the meantime, don't go anywhere alone. Vary your routes if you do go out. Derek has 2 weeks to adjust to this new reality, and the first few days are the most dangerous. She'll be safe, Adrian said. It wasn't a promise. It was a statement of fact. Sarah nodded, satisfied. She shook Elena's hand, whispered, You were brave in there. Don't forget that. Then she was gone, walking back toward the courthouse in her sensible heels and expensive suit, already moving on to the next case, the next woman who needed saving. Elena stood on the sidewalk feeling untethered, like gravity had released her and she didn't know whether to float or fall. Come on, Adrian said gently. Let's get you out of here. He opened the passenger door. Elena got in, muscle memory from the other night. The leather seat felt expensive and safe and completely surreal. Adrian got behind the wheel but didn't start the car immediately. Instead, he turned to look at her. You okay? I don't know. I should be happy. I got what I wanted, but I just keep thinking about how he looked at me when the judge ruled. Like he wants to hurt you? Yes, he does. But wanting and doing are different things, and now there are legal consequences for doing. You really think that'll stop him? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Honestly? Men like Derek don't respond well to being told no. They escalate, push boundaries, test limits. But now those limits are legal ones, and breaking them means jail. Most men, even entitled ones, draw the line at actual jail time. Most men? Derek strikes me as smarter than average, aware of consequences. He'll rage, he'll plot, he might try to find workarounds. But direct confrontation, violation of a court order, that's a risk even he won't take. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the restraining order was more than just paper. And if I'm wrong, Adrian continued, then he deals with me, and I'm not bound by legal niceties. The threat in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it felt protective, like having a guard dog that other people feared but would never bite her. Thank you, she said, for coming. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Wanted to make sure you were all right. I'm not sure what all right feels like anymore. Adrian started the car. That's normal. You just burned down your old life. It'll take time to figure out what comes next. They drove in silence for a while. Elena watched the city pass, trying to see it with new eyes. Free eyes. It looked the same as always, buildings and people and traffic, but her relationship to it had fundamentally changed. She wasn't Derek's girlfriend anymore. Wasn't anyone's anything. Just Elena. Whoever that was. Where are we going? She asked, realizing they weren't heading back to Adrian's building. "Somewhere I think you need to be." 20 minutes later, Adrian pulled up in front of a small cafe. Not the trendy kind Derek would have approved of, just a neighborhood place with mismatched chairs and plants in the windows. "What is this?" "Coffee," Adrian said simply. "Real coffee. Not performance coffee at an expensive restaurant where you can't relax. Just coffee." He got out, came around to open her door. Elena followed him inside, confused but curious. The cafe smelled like espresso and fresh bread. A handful of people sat scattered at tables, working on laptops or reading. No one looked up when they entered. No one cared. The anonymity was startling. Adrian ordered for both of them, something complicated with too many words that Elena didn't process. When the drinks came, he led her to a corner table by the windows. "Why are we here?" Elena asked. "Because you need to remember what normal feels like. Not the performance you did for Derek. Not the fear and calculation. Just sitting in a cafe drinking coffee like a regular person." Elena looked around. He was right. This was normal. This was what people did. Sat in cafes without permission, without monitoring, without consequences. "I used to do this," she realized. "Before Derek, I'd spend hours in places like this, working on designs, reading, just existing. You can do it again. It feels strange, like I'm breaking rules. The only rules now are yours." Elena took a sip of her coffee. It was good. Really good. She couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed something this simple without Derek's commentary ruining it. They sat in comfortable silence. Around them, life continued its mundane performance. Someone ordered a muffin. A barista called out a name. Soft music played from speakers Elena couldn't see. It was ordinary. It was perfect. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said eventually. "Always. Why are you doing this? Not the protection, not the lawyer, that I understand. But this, taking me for coffee, showing me how to be normal again. You don't have to do that." Adrian considered his answer carefully. "When Katya died, I realized I'd missed all the warning signs. Or not missed them. I'd seen them and not understood what they meant. The way she got quieter, stopped doing things she loved, made herself smaller. I thought it was just life, just growing up. I didn't realize she was disappearing." His hands tightened around his cup. "After, I promised myself I'd pay attention. Really pay attention. And when I saw you that night at Cristallo, I saw her. The same shrinking, the same fear, the same careful performance of normalcy. And I thought, not again. Not if I can stop it. So this is about her. It started that way. But you're not Katya, and this isn't redemption. It's just..." He paused, searching for words. "It's just the right thing to do. And I don't do the right thing often enough to pass up the opportunity when it presents itself." Elena studied him across the table. This dangerous man with his gray eyes and his legitimate businesses that probably weren't entirely legitimate. He'd stepped into her hell without hesitation and refused to leave until she was safe. "I think you do the right thing more than you admit," she said softly. Adrian's mouth quirked. "Don't give me too much credit. I'm still the man Derek thinks I am. Dangerous. Connected. Not someone you'd want to cross. But you're on my side. For now." "What happens when now ends?" Adrian met her eyes. "You tell me. This is your life, Elena. I'm just helping you get it back. What you do with it after, that's entirely up to you." The question hung between them. What did she want? What did freedom look like beyond just not being with Derek? Elena had no idea. She'd spent 3 years with her life dictated by someone else's preferences. Before that, she'd been young, aimless, still figuring out who she was. Now she was 27 and didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "I don't even know who I am anymore. Derek spent so long telling me who I should be that I forgot who I actually was." "Then you have the luxury of figuring it out. No rush, no pressure, just time." "That sounds terrifying." "Freedom usually does at first." They finished their coffee. Adrian didn't rush her, didn't check his phone, didn't act like he had anywhere more important to be. Just sat with her in this anonymous cafe while she practiced being a person again. When they finally left, Elena felt steadier. Not fixed. She was probably years away from fixed, but steadier. "Where to now?" Adrian asked as they got back in the car. "I don't know. What do people do with free afternoons when no one's monitoring them?" "Whatever they want, that's the point." Elena thought about it. What did she want? What had she missed? "The art museum," she said suddenly. "There's an exhibit I've wanted to see. Derek said it was pretentious nonsense, so we never went." "Then let's go to the art museum." And just like that, they did. Adrian drove her across town to the museum, paid for admission despite Elena's protests, and then did something extraordinary. He left her alone. "Take your time," he said. "I'll be in the sculpture garden when you're ready." He walked away, giving her space, giving her privacy, giving her the gift of doing something alone without fear of consequences. Elena wandered the galleries for 2 hours, looked at paintings she loved without someone telling her they were derivative, sat on benches and just absorbed art without having to justify why she found it moving. Let herself feel without performing those feelings for someone else. When she finally found Adrian in the sculpture garden, she felt lighter than she had in years. "Better?" he asked, looking up from the book he'd been reading. "Much." They walked through the gardens together. Adrian didn't try to fill the silence with conversation, didn't ask if she was okay every 5 minutes, just existed beside her while she rediscovered what it felt like to exist for herself. The sun was setting when they finally headed back to the car. The sky bled orange and pink across the horizon, beautiful and indifferent to human drama. "Today was good," Elena said as they drove. "Really good, thank you." "You don't have to thank me for treating you like a person." Derek would disagree. Derek's opinion stopped mattering the moment that restraining order went into effect. Elena smiled. The first real smile she could remember in months. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She tensed automatically. "It's probably Sarah," Adrian said, noticing her reaction. "About scheduling the property retrieval." He was right. Elena answered, and Sarah's professional voice filled the car. "Elena, good news. The sheriff's department can do the supervised property retrieval this Saturday, 2 p.m. You'll have 2 hours to collect your belongings. Derek has been notified and confirmed he won't be present." "This Saturday? That's in 3 days. Is that a problem?" No, I didn't expect it to be so soon." "Better to get it over with. You need your things. Get in, get out, move on." Sarah was right. Delaying would just give her more time to dread it. "Okay, Saturday at 2. I'll be there. I'll meet you there, just in case. And Elena, bring someone for moral support. This won't be easy." They hung up. Elena stared at her phone, processing. "Saturday?" Adrian said. It wasn't a question. "Saturday. I'll come with you." "You don't have to." "I want to. Sarah's right. You shouldn't do this alone." Elena's throat tightened. "Why are you being so nice to me?" "Because someone should be. Because you deserve it. Because I can." Simple answers, devastating in their honesty. They drove the rest of the way in silence. When they reached Adrian's building, the familiar security guard waved them through. Elena was starting to recognize faces, guards, doormen, the cleaning staff that serviced the guest suite. She was starting to belong somewhere. That realization hit her as Adrian walked her to the elevator. "Will you have dinner with me?" she asked impulsively. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking me on a date?" "No, maybe. I don't know. I'm asking if you'll eat with me so I don't have to be alone tonight. Is that a date?" "Not if you don't want it to be." "I don't know what I want it to be. I just know I don't want to be alone." Adrian smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his whole face. "Then yes, I'll have dinner with you. Give me 30 minutes to finish some calls. I'll meet you back at your suite." He left her at the 20th floor. Elena went inside, changed out of the clothes she'd worn to court, and tried to calm the nervous energy buzzing through her system. She had a restraining order. She had legal protection. She had Saturday scheduled to get her belongings. She had Adrian Volkov agreeing to have dinner with her. The day had been full of small victories, tiny reclamations of autonomy that added up to something that almost felt like hope. When Adrian knocked 30 minutes later, Elena had ordered Chinese food and set the table like they were normal people having a normal dinner. They ate and talked about nothing important. Movies they'd seen, books they'd read, places they'd traveled. Surface things that let Elena practice conversation without stakes, without fear. Halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed again. She almost ignored it, but something made her check. An email. From Derek's personal account sent to her work email he shouldn't have had access to anymore. The subject line read, "One last chance." Elena's hand started shaking. "What is it?" Adrian asked immediately. "Derek, he emailed me. He's not supposed to. The restraining order. Let me see." She handed him the phone. Adrian read the email, expression growing darker with each line. "What does it say?" Elena asked, afraid of the answer. Adrian's voice was carefully controlled when he spoke. "He's asking you to reconsider, saying he loves you, he made mistakes, he wants to work things out. If you don't respond by tomorrow, he's going to—" Adrian stopped. "Going to what?" "He's threatening to release private photos of you. Intimate photos. Says he has them stored, and unless you agree to meet with him, he'll send them to your employer, your family, everyone you know." The bottom dropped out of Elena's world. We never took those kinds of photos. I would never. Doesn't matter if they're real. The threat of exposure is enough. This is classic abuse escalation, trying to regain control through humiliation and fear. Elena felt sick. "What do I do?" Adrian was already on his phone. "You do nothing. I forward this to Sarah. This is a direct violation of the restraining order. Derek just bought himself a jail cell. But the photos probably don't exist, and even if they do, releasing them would be revenge porn, which is illegal. He's bluffing, trying to scare you back under his control." "It's working." Adrian looked at her and his eyes were ice. "Then let me handle it. Trust me. Derek made a mistake contacting you. Now he pays for it." He made several calls, speaking in rapid tones too low for Elena to hear. When he finished, he put the phone down and took both her hands. "Sarah's filing an emergency motion first thing tomorrow. Derek will be arrested for violating the restraining order. The email is evidence. He's done, Elena. This is over." "What if he does have photos? What if he releases them out of spite?" "Then we deal with it. But I promise you, he won't get the chance." There was something in Adrian's voice that made Elena believe him. Something dark and certain that suggested Derek had finally crossed a line he shouldn't have. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, but you're all so free. And tomorrow, Derek learns what happens when you threaten someone I've promised to protect." The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead, it felt safe, like she'd found shelter in the eye of a storm. They didn't finish dinner. Adrian stayed while Elena tried to process everything. When she finally broke down crying, from relief, from fear, from 3 years of holding everything together, he didn't try to fix it, just sat with her while she shattered, solid and steady and exactly what she needed. Later, after he'd left and she was alone in the guest suite, Elena looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Same face, different woman. She'd testified in court, gotten a restraining order, survived Derek's attempt to regain control. Tomorrow, he'd be arrested. And sometime after that, Elena Cross would figure out who she was beyond the woman who survived Derek Hale. But tonight, she was just tired. She went to bed and dreamed of freedom. Derek Hale was arrested at 9:17 Thursday morning. Elena knew the exact time because Sarah Chen called her the moment it happened, voice tight with satisfaction. He showed up at his office like nothing had changed. 2 officers were waiting. They took him into custody without incident. Elena sat on the edge of the guest suite bed, phone pressed to her ear, trying to process the information. Just like that? Just like that? The email was a clear violation of the restraining order. Combined with the revenge porn threat, the judge didn't hesitate. He's being held pending bail hearing this afternoon. Will he get bail? Probably. But it'll be high, and there'll be conditions. No contact whatsoever. Electronic monitoring, maybe. The point is, he's learning there are consequences. After they hung up, Elena sat in the morning silence, trying to feel victorious. Derek was arrested. The man who'd controlled her for 3 years was in a jail cell because he'd finally pushed too far. She should have felt relieved, vindicated, safe. Instead, she felt numb. The knock on her door came an hour later. Adrian, carrying coffee and pastries like this, was a normal morning instead of the day her abuser got arrested. "Sarah called you," he said, reading her expression. "How did you know?" "Because she called me too. Wanted to make sure you had support." He set the coffee on the counter. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know. I thought I'd feel different, better. But I just feel. She searched for the word. Empty. Adrian nodded like he understood. You've been running on adrenaline for days. Fight or flight. Now that the immediate threat is handled, your body's crashing. It's normal. Nothing about this feels normal. No, but it will. Eventually. They sat together drinking coffee while the city woke up outside. Elena tried to imagine Derek in custody, stripped of his expensive suit and his performance of control. The image should have satisfied something in her. Instead, it just felt surreal. The bail hearing is at 3, Adrian said. Sarah doesn't think you need to be there, but if you want to go, I don't. I can't see him again. Not yet. Then you don't have to. Sarah will handle it. Elena wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, absorbing its warmth. What happens after bail if he gets out? He goes home with conditions. Electronic monitoring, probably. No contact provisions, even stricter than before. And he knows now that violating them means immediate arrest. Most people learn from their first night in jail. And if Derek isn't most people? Adrian's expression hardened. Then he deals with me. The casual menace in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, Elena found it oddly comforting. She'd spent 3 years with a man who used his power to hurt her. Now she had someone using his power to protect her. The difference was everything. Tomorrow's Saturday, she said, changing subjects before she could think too hard about what Adrian's protection actually meant. The property retrieval. I haven't forgotten. I'm dreading it, going back there, seeing his apartment, sorting through 3 years of my life like it's just stuff to be divided. It is just stuff. Important stuff, yes. Your belongings, your work, things that matter to you. But that apartment isn't your life anymore. It's just a place you used to be trapped. Elena appreciated the reframing, even if she didn't quite believe it yet. Will you really come with me? I said I would. Thank you. Adrian studied her for a long moment. You keep thanking me. You don't have to. I don't know what else to say. You've done so much. I've done what anyone should do. What everyone around you should have done years ago. His voice carried an edge of anger, but not at her. You were surrounded by people who saw what was happening and did nothing. Colleagues, neighbors, probably friends before he isolated you from them. They all chose comfort over intervention. So no, you don't thank me for basic human decency. The words hit harder than Elena expected. Because he was right. People had seen. Her coworker who'd noticed the bruises and accepted her explanation about being clumsy. Her downstairs neighbor who definitely heard Derek's raised voice through thin walls. Even her own sister, who'd commented once that Derek seemed intense before dropping the subject when Elena got defensive. Everyone had known. No one had intervened. I made it easy for them, Elena said quietly. I covered for him, made excuses, pretended everything was fine. How could they help when I kept insisting I didn't need it? That's what abuse does. Makes you complicit in your own isolation. It's not your fault. Feels like it should be. At least partially. It's not. The certainty in Adrian's voice left no room for argument. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to absolve herself of the guilt that sat heavy in her chest like stones. Maybe someday she would. They spent the rest of the morning in careful normalcy. Adrian worked from the guest suite, laptop open, phone calls in rapid succession, the legitimate businessman facade firmly in place. Elena tried to work on design projects she'd neglected, but concentration felt impossible. Around 2, Sarah called with an update. Derek had been released on $50,000 bail with strict conditions. Electronic monitoring, no contact. He'd been ordered to stay at least 1,000 feet from Elena at all times. He looked rough, Sarah reported. One night in jail definitely affected him. His lawyer tried to argue the conditions were excessive, but the judge wasn't having it. She made it very clear that one more violation means revocation of bail, and he stays locked up until trial. Trial? Elena's stomach dropped. There's going to be a trial? For the restraining order violation, yes. Probably plea it out to avoid court, but technically it's a criminal charge now. And Elena? That's good. It means a criminal record. It means consequences that follow him. After the call, Elena felt exhausted despite having done nothing all day. The emotional whiplash of the past week was catching up with her, terror to relief to numbness to dread, all cycling through on endless repeat. You should rest, Adrian said, closing his laptop. Actually rest, not just sitting here pretending to be okay. I don't know how to rest. I don't know how to do anything except survive. Then learn. You have time now, permission. No one's monitoring you or judging you or waiting for you to fail. Elena looked at him, this strange man who'd inserted himself into her nightmare and refused to leave. Why do you care so much? Really? I know you said it's about your sister, but this, she gestured between them. This feels like more than redemption. Adrian was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. When Katya died, I made myself a promise that I'd never look away again. Never choose comfort over intervention. Never let fear of complications stop me from doing what's right. He met her eyes. You're not Katya. This isn't about replacing her or fixing the past. But when I saw you in that restaurant, I saw someone who needed help. And I've spent 20 years building resources specifically so I could help when this moment came. So yes, I care. Because caring is the promise I made. That's a heavy promise to carry. Heavy promises are the only ones worth keeping. Something shifted in Elena's chest. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. This man carried his own ghosts, his own guilt, his own carefully constructed redemption. She was part of that, yes, but she was also herself, Elena, who mattered independent of whatever narrative Adrian was building. Thank you for seeing me, she said softly. Not just as your sister's ghost, but as me. Adrian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You're hard to miss, Elena Cross. The moment stretched between them, fragile and significant. Then Adrian's phone buzzed and broke it. He glanced at the screen, frowned. I need to take this. Business issue that needs immediate attention. Go, I'll be fine. He hesitated at the door. Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Sarah. Not building security, not delivery people, no one. You really think Derek would? I think he's desperate, and desperate men do stupid things. So humor me. Lock the door. Elena did. Heard Adrian's footsteps fade down the hall, then silence. She was alone. Truly alone for the first time since leaving Cristallo. The apartment felt too quiet. Elena turned on music, tried to work, gave up and stared out the windows at the city below. People down there living normal lives, dealing with normal problems. She envied them their mundane concerns. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Cross? A man's voice. Unfamiliar. Who is this? Detective Marcus Rivera, City Police. I'm calling about Derek Hale. Elena's heart stopped. What about him? His bail conditions include electronic monitoring. The ankle bracelet he's wearing tracks his location at all times. About 30 minutes ago, it showed him heading toward the downtown area where you're currently staying. The world tilted. What? He's not allowed? The restraining order? I know, that's why I'm calling. He hasn't violated the distance requirement yet, but he's getting close. I wanted to give you a heads up. Are you somewhere safe? Yes, I'm in a secure building. He can't get in. Good. Stay there. I've got officers en route to intercept him before he gets within 1,000 feet. But if he manages to contact you in any way, call 911 immediately. They hung up. Elena stood frozen, phone clutched in her hand. Derek was coming. Despite the bail conditions, despite the monitoring, despite everything, he was coming. She should call Adrian, should tell someone. But her hands were shaking too badly to dial. The building was secure. Derek couldn't get past the lobby. The security guards knew not to let him up. She was safe. She was safe. The mantra didn't stop her heart from racing. 20 minutes later, her phone rang again. Detective Rivera. We intercepted him. He's in custody again. Bail revoked. You're safe, Ms. Cross. What was he doing? Why was he coming here? Said he just wanted to talk to you. Didn't understand why everyone was overreacting. Classic denial. Rivera's voice hardened. But attempted violation is still violation. Judge won't be lenient this time. He'll stay locked up until trial. After the call, Elena sank onto the couch, adrenaline crash hitting her like a wave. Derek had tried. actually tried to get to her despite knowing it meant jail. That level of obsession, of refusal to accept reality, it terrified her. When Adrian returned an hour later, she was still sitting there, numb and shaking. Elena? He was across the room immediately. What happened? She told him. Watched his expression go from concerned to furious. He came here. After everything, Adrian cut himself off, visibly restraining whatever he wanted to say. Are you all right? They caught him. Detective Rivera said he's back in custody. Bail revoked. Good. That's good. Adrian sat beside her, close but not touching. I should have been here. You were working. You couldn't have known. I should have anticipated it. Derek's type. They don't accept no. They escalate until they're physically stopped. Well, he's stopped now, isn't he? Yes. He stopped. But something in Adrian's tone made Elena look at him sharply. What aren't you telling me? Adrian met her eyes. Men like Derek don't give up because of jail. They give up when they're truly beaten, broken, when continuing costs more than they're willing to pay. And Derek isn't there yet. No, but he will be. The promise in Adrian's voice was dark and certain. Elena should have asked what he meant, should have insisted on details. Instead, she just felt grateful that someone was finally taking Derek seriously. I'm tired, she said. So tired of being afraid. Then stop being afraid. I've got this. I've got you. Derek won't get another chance to hurt you. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Adrian Volkov's protection was absolute. But 3 years with Derek had taught her that control was an illusion, that safety was temporary, that the only person you could truly rely on was yourself. I need to learn to protect myself, she said. Not just rely on you or lawyers or police. I need to be strong enough to handle this myself. You are strong. You survived 3 years with him. You're still here, still fighting. That's strength. No, that's survival. Strength would be, I don't know what strength looks like anymore, but I need to find it. Adrian studied her for a long moment. There's a gym in this building. Self-defense classes. Boxing. Whatever you want to learn, I can arrange it. I don't want to learn to box. I want to learn to not be afraid. A fear isn't weakness, Elena. Fear is what kept you alive. What you do with it, that's what matters. What am I doing with it? You're here. You left him. You got a restraining order. You're building a new life. That's not nothing. Elena knew he was right intellectually, but emotionally she still felt like the terrified woman at Cristallo, frozen in place while Derek whispered death threats across white linen. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every sound in the building made her jump. Every shadow felt like Derek somehow slipping past security. Her rational mind knew he was in jail. Her traumatized nervous system didn't care. Around 3 a.m., she gave up and went to the living room windows. The city never slept. Neither, apparently, did she. The knock on her door made her nearly scream. Elena, it's Adrian. I saw your lights on. She opened the door. He stood there in dark pants and a t-shirt, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked almost human, almost approachable. Can't sleep? He asked. Every time I close my eyes, I see him, coming here, getting past security somehow, finding me. He's in jail. I know, my brain knows, but my body doesn't believe it. Adrian hesitated, then said, Come upstairs, I'll show you something. Elena should have said no, should have maintained boundaries, kept this professional. Instead, she followed him to the elevator. His apartment was on the 22nd floor. When he opened the door, Elena stopped short. She'd expected masculine minimalism, leather and dark wood, and the kind of sterile perfection that came from having money but no life. Instead, she found warmth. Books everywhere. Art on the walls that looked chosen for love, not investment. A kitchen that showed signs of actual use. It looked lived in. Human. This way. Adrian led her to a room off the main living area. It was an office, but one wall was entirely screens. Security feeds from throughout the building. Lobby, parking garage, every elevator, every hallway. I had this installed years ago, Adrian explained. Force of habit from other things. But look, he pulled up different feeds. This is the lobby, 24-hour security. This is the parking garage, access controlled, cameras everywhere. This is your floor. He pointed to a feed showing the 20th floor hallway. Empty, quiet, safe. Derek is in a cell downtown. He can't get out. And even if he somehow did, he'd have to get past building security, past multiple checkpoints, past surveillance that would track him before he got within 2 floors of you. He's not coming, Elena. You're safe. Seeing it laid out like that, the multiple layers of protection, the controlled access, the constant monitoring, something in Elena's chest finally loosened. You really do own this building. I really do, and I really meant it when I said you're safe here. Elena studied the screens, watching grainy footage of empty hallways and alert security guards. This is a lot of security for legitimate real estate. I have enemies. Comes with the territory. Business enemies? Among others. Elena looked at him. You're not going to tell me what you really do, are you? I've told you. Real estate, investments, import-export. And the parts you're not telling me? Adrian's expression was unreadable. Are things you're better off not knowing. Trust me on that. Everyone keeps telling me to trust you. Do you? Elena considered the question seriously. Did she trust Adrian Volkov, this man with his dangerous reputation and his security feeds and his carefully controlled violence? Yes, she realized. I do. Maybe that makes me stupid, but I trust you. It doesn't make you stupid. It makes you intuitive. You trusted Derek, and he hurt you. You trust me, and I'm keeping you safe. You're learning to tell the difference. They stood in the blue glow of the security screens, and Elena felt her exhaustion finally catch up with her. Thank you, she said, for showing me this, for making it real instead of just words. Get some sleep, real sleep. Tomorrow's Saturday, property retrieval. You need to be rested for that. Right, Saturday, facing the apartment again, sorting through the wreckage of her old life. I don't want to go back there, she admitted. I know. But you need your things, and you need the closure of walking out one final time. He was right. She knew he was right. Didn't make it easier. Adrian walked her back to the guest suite. At the door, he paused. Elena, if you need anything tonight, anything at all, call me. I don't care what time it is. You've done enough. Let me decide what's enough. After he left, Elena finally managed to sleep. Not well, not peacefully, but enough to function. When morning came, she felt marginally more human. Sarah called to confirm the 2 p.m. appointment. Adrian appeared with coffee and the kind of steady presence that made difficult things feel manageable. Ready? He asked. No, but let's do it anyway. The drive to her old apartment felt surreal. Elena hadn't been back since the night at Cristallo. Less than a week, but it felt like years. The building looked the same. Same brick facade, same maintained landscaping, same veneer of upscale urban living. But now Elena could see it for what it was, a cage she'd decorated and called home. 2 sheriff's deputies waited in the lobby. Sarah was there too, professional and prepared. Derek confirmed he wouldn't be present, Sarah said, but we'll be quick anyway, 2 hours maximum. Take only what's yours or what you can't live without. Everything else can be handled through lawyers later. They rode the elevator in tense silence. When the doors opened on the 8th floor, Elena's hands started shaking. You've got this, Adrian murmured. Only she could hear him. The apartment door was unlocked. Sarah pushed it open. Elena stepped inside and felt like she was entering a museum of her own trauma. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it. Her coffee cup still in the sink from that morning, Derek's jacket on the chair. The expensive decorations he'd chosen because her taste was too pedestrian. Where do you want to start? Sarah asked gently. My office. My design work. That's the most important. They moved through the apartment methodically. Elena's laptop, her portfolio, her design books. Then clothes. The ones Derek hadn't chosen. The comfortable things she'd hidden in the back of the closet. Personal items. Photos from before Derek, when she'd still had friends and family she saw regularly. The deputies helped carry boxes to Adrian's car. He stayed close but gave her space, understanding somehow that she needed to do this herself. In the bedroom, Elena found the bruise photos hidden in a box at the back of her closet, printed copies she'd made and stashed just in case, evidence of her own abuse that she'd been too afraid to use. Until now. She showed them to Sarah. For the trial, if it goes that far. Sarah's expression was grim. It won't go to trial. Derek will plead out when he sees these. But yes, I'll keep them for the file. An hour and 40 minutes later, Elena stood in the empty living room taking one last look. This apartment had been her prison. She'd cooked meals here trying to please someone who couldn't be pleased, cried here alone while Derek was at work, made herself smaller and smaller until she'd almost disappeared. But she hadn't disappeared. She'd survived. Ready to go? Adrian asked. Yes. Elena turned her back on the apartment. I'm ready. She walked out and didn't look back. In the elevator, something in her chest cracked open. Not breaking, releasing, like she'd been holding her breath for 3 years and finally remembered how to exhale. You okay? Adrian asked. I think so. Better than okay. I just closed a chapter. Good. Now you get to write the next one. They loaded the last boxes into Adrian's car. Sarah hugged her goodbye, promised to stay in touch about the legal proceedings. On the drive back, Elena watched the city pass and felt different, lighter. The apartment was behind her. Derek was in jail. Her things, the important things, the pieces of herself she'd managed to save, were safe. Thank you, she said to Adrian, for being there, for all of it. You did the hard part. I just carried boxes. You did more than that, you know you did. Adrian glanced at her, something warm in his usually cool expression. You're going to be okay, Elena Cross. Better than okay. How do you know? Because you're stronger than you think, and because you're finally free to become whoever you want to be. Back at the building, they unloaded everything into the guest suite. Elena's laptop on the desk, her clothes in the closet, her books on the shelves. Small transformations that turned the impersonal space into something that belonged to her. When everything was unpacked, Adrian ordered dinner and they ate surrounded by Elena's reclaimed life. What happens now? She asked. Now? You live. Actually live. Figure out what Elena Cross wants from life when no one's telling her what to want. That sounds terrifying. Most freedom does, at first. They talked late into the night about everything and nothing. Elena told him about the career she'd wanted before Derek convinced her to settle. Adrian told her about building his empire from nothing, about the choices he'd made and the prices he'd paid. It was easy, natural, the kind of conversation Elena had forgotten was possible. When Adrian finally left, Elena sat alone in her reclaimed space and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness yet, not healing, but peace. The beginning of safety, the foundation of freedom. It was enough. For now, it was more than enough. 3 weeks later, Derek Hale accepted a plea deal. Sarah called Elena with the news on a Tuesday morning. He's pleading guilty to violating the restraining order. 6 months jail time, 3 years probation after release, mandatory anger management and counseling. The permanent restraining order stays in effect for 5 years. Elena sat at her desk in the guest suite. Her suite now, really, since Adrian had told her to stay as long as she needed, trying to absorb what this meant. So it's over? The legal part, yes. He'll be sentenced next week, but the plea is binding. He accepted responsibility, which means no trial, no having to testify again. You're done. Done. The word felt impossible. 3 years of her life, 3 weeks of legal warfare, and now it was just done. What about after? Elena asked. After he gets out? The probation conditions are strict. Any contact with you, any violation whatsoever, he goes back to jail for the remainder of his sentence, plus additional charges. And Elena? Men who go to jail for domestic violence usually learn their lesson. The shame of it, the record, it follows them. Derek's reputation is destroyed. His business is suffering. He's lost everything that mattered to him. Everything except his freedom, eventually. But Sarah was right. Derek had built his identity on success and respect. Now he was a convicted abuser. That stain didn't wash off. Thank you, Elena said, for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Take care of yourself, Elena. Build that life you deserve. After they hung up, Elena sat in the quiet apartment trying to feel victorious. This was what she'd wanted. Derek held accountable, legal protection, freedom to move on. So why did she feel hollow? The answer came to her slowly. Because Derek being in jail didn't erase 3 years of damage. didn't automatically heal the parts of herself she'd lost or forgotten, didn't make her whole again. That work, the real work of becoming Elena Cross again, was still ahead of her. She was staring at her laptop, trying to focus on a design project, when Adrian knocked. "I heard from Sarah," he said, reading her expression. "The plea deal. 6 months, then probation, then it's really over. How do you feel?" "I don't know. I should feel relieved, grateful. Instead, I just feel," she searched for the word, "tired, like I've been running a marathon and someone just told me I can stop, but I don't remember how." Adrian sat across from her, the same spot he'd occupied so many times over the past weeks. It had become familiar, this configuration, coffee and conversation, and the slow work of rebuilding trust. "You've been in survival mode for 3 years," he said. "Now you get to stop surviving and start living. That transition is harder than people think." "How do I do it? How do I just move on?" "You don't. Not all at once. You take it day by day. You figure out what you want, what makes you happy, what version of Elena you want to be now. I don't even know who that is anymore. Then you get to discover it. That's not a burden, Elena. That's freedom." She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel excited about possibilities, instead of terrified by all the choices she'd have to make. "I need to find my own place," she said suddenly. "I can't stay here forever. You've been too generous already." "You can stay as long as you need." "That's the problem. I need to learn to stand on my own, not rely on your protection or your resources. I need to be independent." Adrian studied her for a long moment. Independence doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means having the choice. You're choosing to stay until you're ready to leave. That's not dependence, that's wisdom. Or cowardice. There's nothing cowardly about taking time to heal. Elena knew he was right. Still, the need to prove she could survive without help gnawed at her. Derek had made her dependent, financially, emotionally, practically. Now she needed to prove to herself that she could exist independently. "I'm going back to work," she announced. "Next week. I've been hiding long enough. Are you ready for that?" "No, but I don't think I'll ever feel ready, so I might as well just do it." Adrian nodded slowly. "Then let me arrange security, just for the first few weeks, until Derek is sentenced and you know he's locked up. I don't need a bodyguard. You need peace of mind. Let me give you that. Please." The please got her. Adrian Volkov didn't strike her as a man who said please often. "Okay, but discreet. I don't want to show up to work with some obvious security detail. Discreet, I promise." He kept his word. When Elena returned to work the following Monday, she didn't see any obvious protection, but she felt it. A car that always seemed to be nearby. A man in a coffee shop across the street who was there too consistently to be coincidence. It should have felt oppressive. Instead, it felt safe. Her coworkers welcomed her back with careful normalcy. No one mentioned her absence beyond vague acknowledgments of personal time. Her boss pulled her aside to say her job was secure and to take whatever time she needed. Elena threw herself into work with desperate focus. Design projects became a refuge, a place where she had control and competence and measurable success. Hours disappeared into color palettes and typography and the clean logic of visual communication. It felt good, normal. Like maybe she could rebuild a life that looked like everyone else's. On Wednesday, she went into coffee with a coworker named Lisa, someone who'd been friendly before Derek isolated her, someone Elena had missed without realizing it. "I'm glad you're back," Lisa said over lattes. "We were worried about you." "Why?" Lisa hesitated, choosing words carefully. You weren't yourself for a while. Quieter. Like you were disappearing. A few of us talked about saying something, but we didn't know how." Elena's throat tightened. "I wish you had." "Would you have listened?" Honest question. Elena considered it honestly. "Probably not. I was too deep in it, too convinced everything was normal. But you got out. That's what matters. With help. A lot of help. I didn't do it alone." "Nobody does. That's not weakness, Elena. That's just being human." The conversation stayed with her. The idea that needing help was human rather than weak, it contradicted everything Derek had taught her about self-sufficiency and not being a burden. That night she told Adrian about it over dinner. They'd fallen into a routine of eating together several times a week. Not dates. Elena was careful about that distinction. Just two people sharing meals and conversation. Lisa said something interesting today, Elena began, about needing help being human instead of weak. It made me realize how much Derek twisted my understanding of basic things. That's what abusers do. They redefine reality until you can't trust your own perception. How do I learn to trust myself again? By making small choices and seeing that the world doesn't end. By listening to your instincts instead of second-guessing them. By remembering that you survived something that breaks a lot of people. Elena pushed food around her plate. Can I ask you something personal? Always. After Katya died, how did you move on? How did you not let it destroy you? Adrian was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried old pain worn smooth by years. I didn't move on. I redirected. Turned grief into purpose. Built power so I'd never be helpless again. It wasn't healthy, but it was survival. Do you regret it? Sometimes, the things I did to build this, he gestured vaguely at the expensive apartment, the life he'd created. Some of them I'm not proud of, but they also put me in a position to help you, to help others. So no, I don't regret it, but I recognize the cost. What cost? Adrian met her eyes. I built walls so high that most people can't reach me. Got so used to being dangerous that being human feels risky. You're one of the first people in years I've let see past the performance. The admission hung between them, intimate and vulnerable. Why me? Elena asked softly. Because you needed someone real. And I was tired of being a performance. Something shifted in the air. Elena felt it like a physical change. The careful distance they'd maintained suddenly feeling like a choice rather than necessity. Adrian, I know. He cut her off gently. You're not ready. You need time to figure out who you are outside of Derek's shadow. I'm not asking for anything, Elena. Just telling you the truth. What truth? That I care about you. Not as a project or redemption, as you. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll still be here. Elena's heart hammered. She should have felt pressured, trapped. Instead, she felt seen. I care about you too, she admitted, but I don't know what that means yet. I don't know what healthy looks like or how to trust my feelings. Everything's still so confused. Then we stay confused together. No pressure, no expectations, just this. Whatever this is. Friends? If that's what you need. I think it is. For now. Then friends it is. They finished dinner talking about safer things. But something had changed. An acknowledgement of possibility without the demand for action. It felt right. Honest. Like maybe Elena was learning to recognize healthy after all. The weeks blurred into a new rhythm. Work during the day, where Elena slowly rebuilt her confidence and skill. Evenings with Adrian, learning to enjoy company without performing for it. Weekends exploring the city alone, reclaiming independence one coffee shop and museum at a time. Derek's sentencing came and went. 6 months in county jail, exactly as the plea deal specified. Elena didn't attend, didn't need to see him led away in handcuffs to know it was real. Sarah sent her a text. It's official. He's locked up. You're free. Free. Elena stood at the windows of her suite, her apartment now, really, since Adrian had officially signed it over to her at a rent she could actually afford with her salary, and tried to feel what freedom meant. It meant waking up without fear, meant choosing her own clothes, her own food, her own schedule, meant saying no without consequences, meant building a life based on what she wanted instead of what someone else demanded. It meant possibility. 2 months after Derek's sentencing, Elena signed the lease on a small studio across town. Not because she had to leave, Adrian had made it clear she could stay indefinitely, but because she was ready to have space that was entirely hers, earned by her own work, decorated to her own taste. Moving day was bittersweet. Adrian helped her load boxes, made jokes about her collection of design books, ordered pizza when they both got too tired to cook. Standing in her new apartment surrounded by boxes, Elena felt something crack open in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or hope. This is good, Adrian said, reading her expression. This is you choosing your life. I'm terrified. Good terrified or bad terrified? Elena considered. Good terrified, like standing at the edge of something new. Then jump. You've done harder things. He left her to unpack, respecting her need to do this part alone. Elena spent the evening arranging furniture and hanging art and creating a space that reflected who she was becoming. Her phone buzzed around midnight. Adrian, how's the first night in your new place? Scary. Good. Both. That sounds about right. Sleep well, Elena Cross. You earned this. She did sleep well. Better than she had in years. Woke up in her own apartment, in a bed she'd chosen, with sunlight streaming through windows that looked out on a future she got to design. It felt like resurrection. Work became more than survival. It became joy again. Elena took on projects she'd avoided while with Derek, pushed her creativity in directions he'd called impractical. Her portfolio grew, her reputation rebuilt. She got a promotion, a raise, recognition for talent. Derek had spent years undermining. She made friends, real friends, not the carefully curated relationships Derek had permitted. Went out for drinks after work, joined a book club, started taking dance classes just because they sounded fun. Slowly, imperceptibly, Elena Cross emerged from the wreckage of who she'd been forced to be. And through it all, Adrian remained constant. Not hovering, not controlling, just present. They had dinner once a week, texted occasionally. He came to her apartment warming party and charmed her new friends while staying carefully in the background. He's gorgeous, Lisa whispered during the party. And the way he looks at you. We're friends, Elena insisted. Honey, men don't look at friends like that. But Elena wasn't ready. Not yet. The space between friendship and something more felt too significant to cross without certainty. 6 months after Derek's sentencing, Elena got a call from Sarah. He's being released early. Good behavior, overcrowding, the usual reasons. He'll be out next week. Elena's stomach dropped. Next week? But he's supposed to have 2 more months. I know, I'm sorry, but the probation conditions still apply. 5-year restraining order still in effect. He can't contact you, can't come near you. If he does, he goes right back. What if he tries anyway? Then we handle it. But Elena? 6 months in jail changes people. Especially people like Derek who've never faced real consequences before. He's probably scared, humiliated, more concerned with rebuilding his own life than coming after you. Probably. Maybe. Hopefully. Not certainties, just odds. Elena told Adrian that night over their weekly dinner. He's getting out early. Next week. Adrian's expression hardened. How do you feel about that? Terrified, even though I shouldn't be. Even though I have legal protection and distance and a whole life he's not part of anymore. Fear doesn't follow logic. You're allowed to be scared. What if he comes after me? Then he deals with consequences. Legal ones from Sarah, other ones from me. The casual menace in Adrian's voice should have alarmed her. Instead, it felt protective. I don't want you doing anything that gets you in trouble, Elena said. I won't, but I will make sure you're safe. That's non-negotiable. Derek was released on a Thursday. Elena spent the day jumpy and anxious, convinced every shadow was him, every stranger a threat. But nothing happened. No contact, no sightings, just the knowledge that he was out there somewhere, living his diminished life. Friday came and went. Then the weekend. Elena started to breathe again. Monday morning, she was walking to work when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena? Derek's voice. Unmistakable even through phone static. Her blood went cold. You're not supposed to contact me. I know, I need you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I was wrong, and I know that now. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear it. Elena's hands shook. You violated the restraining order by calling me. I know. I'll turn myself in after this. You deserved an apology. A real one. Not the legal bullshit, but actual acknowledgement that I hurt you and it was wrong. Elena stopped walking. Around her, morning commuters flowed past, oblivious. Why are you really calling? Derek was quiet for a moment. Because 6 months in a cell gives you a lot of time to think about who you are, what you've done. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I couldn't handle my own insecurity. I took someone amazing and tried to make her small so I could feel big. And now you're out there living your life and I'm nothing. You won, Elena. You survived me. I just wanted you to know that I know that. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they just felt sad. I didn't win, Derek. There was no competition. You hurt me and I left. That's not winning. That's just survival. You're right. You always were right. I just couldn't see it. Elena took a breath. This was it. The moment to either hold on to anger or let it go. I hope you get help, she said finally. Real help. Not because I forgive you or because we'll ever speak again, but because no one should be as broken as you were. Get therapy. Figure out why you need to control people. Become someone different. I'm trying. I know it doesn't matter to you, but I'm trying. Goodbye, Derek. She hung up, stood on the sidewalk shaking. Her phone rang again immediately. Not Derek. Adrian. Are you all right? I just got an alert that Derek called you. How did you? I've been monitoring his movements since his release. He's at a payphone downtown. I can have people there in 5 minutes if you want to press charges. Elena closed her eyes. She could do it. Could send Derek back to jail for violating the order. Would be justified, legal, appropriate. But suddenly, she didn't want to. No, she said. Let him go. He apologized. Actually apologized. I think he finally understands what he did. You're sure? Yes. I'm done, Adrian. Done being angry, done being afraid, done letting Derek Hale take up space in my life. He called, he apologized, and now I'm moving on for real. Okay, but if he contacts you again, then I'll press charges. But I don't think he will. He sounded broken, like he finally hit bottom. After they hung up, Elena continued walking to work. The fear that had gripped her since learning about Derek's release was gone. In its place was something lighter, closure maybe, or just the understanding that Derek was no longer her problem. She got to work, threw herself into a new project, and didn't think about him again. That evening, Adrian showed up at her apartment unannounced. I wanted to make sure you were okay, he said, after this morning. I'm fine. Actually fine. It's strange, I thought hearing his voice would break me. Instead, it just felt like closing a door. You're stronger than you know. I'm learning that. They ordered takeout and ate on her small balcony, watching the city lights come on as the sun set. Can I ask you something? Elena said eventually. Always. That night at Cristallo, why did you really intervene? The truth. Not the story about Katya, but the real reason. Adrian was quiet for a long time. I saw you, he said finally. Not just the situation, not just the abuse. I saw you, this woman who was trying so hard to disappear and couldn't quite manage it. Something in your eyes. Resistance, maybe. Like you were still fighting even though you'd forgotten how. And I thought, she deserves a chance. She deserves someone to see her and refuse to look away. You saw me when I couldn't see myself. I saw who you could become if you survived. And I was right. Elena turned to look at him, really look at him. This dangerous man who'd saved her life without asking permission, who'd given her space to heal without demanding anything in return, who'd shown her what protection looked like when it came from a place of respect instead of control. I think I'm ready, she said softly. Ready for what? To stop being just friends. Adrian went very still. Elena, I know. It's fast, it's maybe stupid, but I've spent months figuring out who I am, and part of who I am is someone who cares about you, not because you saved me, not because I'm dependent or broken, but because you're you and I'm me, and this, whatever this is, it feels right. I don't want to be a rebound or a replacement for Derek. You're not. You're nothing like him. Where he needed control, you offer choice. Where he demanded, you suggest. Where he trapped, you create space. I know the difference now, and I'm choosing you, if you'll have me. Adrian cupped her face in his hands, gentle and careful. I've been waiting for you to be ready since the moment I met you. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home. Not to a place, but to herself. To safety and choice and the understanding that love didn't have to hurt. They took it slow. No rushing, no pressure, just the careful exploration of two people who'd both been broken in different ways, learning how to build something healthy together. Elena kept her apartment, kept her independence, kept the life she'd built for herself. But she added Adrian to it, not as the center, but as a partner. Someone who enhanced rather than consumed. They had dinner at her place and his, went to galleries and concerts and all the places Elena had missed, spent quiet evenings reading while existing in comfortable silence, built a relationship based on mutual respect instead of control. It wasn't perfect. Elena still had moments of panic, of old fear surging up unexpectedly. But Adrian never pushed, never demanded, just waited while she worked through it, and slowly the panic came less frequently. The fear lost its grip. The woman Elena was becoming grew stronger than the woman Derek had tried to destroy. A year after that night at Cristallo, Elena stood in a gallery showing her own work. Designs that had started as healing exercises had evolved into an exhibition exploring themes of transformation and resilience. Adrian stood beside her, proud but not possessive. Her friends surrounded her, celebrating. Even Lisa was there, grinning like she'd known all along. "You did it," Adrian murmured. "Built the life you deserve." "We did it," Elena corrected. "I couldn't have gotten here alone." "Maybe not, but you walked the path yourself. I just made sure you were safe while you did." Elena looked around the gallery at the evidence of her resurrection. From that terrified woman at Cristallo to this, artist, designer, survivor, woman in love with a dangerous man who'd chosen to be gentle with her. It was more than she'd imagined possible. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart jumped automatically, old reflexes dying hard. But it wasn't Derek. It was a gallery owner from New York, interested in her work, wanting to discuss a showing, opportunity, future, possibilities that had nothing to do with fear. Elena smiled and answered the phone. Later that night, back at Adrian's apartment, where she'd been spending more and more time, they sat on his balcony looking at the city that had witnessed her transformation. "I got an offer," Elena said. "A gallery in New York wants to show my work." "That's incredible. When?" "6 months. I'd need to go for at least 2 weeks. Maybe a month." "So go." "Just like that?" Adrian smiled. "Elena, I've watched you rebuild yourself from nothing. You think I'm going to stand in the way of your success? Go to New York, show your work, build your career. I'll be here when you get back." "You could come with me." "I could, or you could go alone and prove to yourself that you can. What do you want?" Elena considered. A year ago, the thought of traveling alone would have terrified her. Now it felt exciting, challenging, possible. "I want to go alone, but I want you to be here when I come back. Always." They sat in comfortable silence, and Elena realized something profound. She'd survived Derek Hale. But more than that, she'd moved beyond surviving. She'd learned to live again, to trust herself, to build relationships based on choice rather than need. She thought about that terrified woman at Cristallo, frozen in place while Derek whispered death threats. Thought about how far she'd come from that moment. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still hard days, moments when old fears resurfaced. But those moments grew further apart. And when they came, Elena had tools now. Support, strength. She had herself back. The self Derek had tried to destroy, but also a new self, stronger, wiser, more certain of her worth. "Thank you," she said to Adrian. "For what?" "For seeing me that night, for refusing to look away, for helping me become this." Adrian took her hand. "You became this all on your own. I just made sure you survived long enough to do it. Still, thank you." They stayed on the balcony until the city lights blurred into stars. Two people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to build something bright. 6 months later, Elena's show in New York was a triumph. She sold pieces, made connections, built a reputation that extended beyond the woman who'd survived abuse to the artist who transformed pain into beauty. She came back to a life she'd built herself, to friends who supported her, to work that fulfilled her, to a man who loved her without needing to control her. Derek Hale, meanwhile, had disappeared into obscurity. His business failed. His reputation never recovered. Elena heard through Sarah that he'd moved to another city, started over somewhere no one knew his history. She hoped he'd gotten help, hoped he'd become someone different, but mostly she just stopped thinking about him because her life was no longer defined by what he'd done to her. It was defined by what she'd built from the ruins he'd left behind. 2 years after Cristallo, Elena Cross stood in her own apartment, successful and independent and loved. She looked in the mirror and recognized the woman staring back. Not Derek's victim, not even just a survivor, just Elena. Complicated and strong and still becoming. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. And when Adrian knocked on her door that evening, when she opened it and saw his smile, when they settled into their comfortable routine of dinner and conversation and the kind of love that enhances rather than consumes, Elena Cross knew she'd finally found what she'd been looking for all along. Not rescue, not redemption, not someone to complete her, just the freedom to be herself, the courage to build a life worth living. The understanding that she was enough, all on her own, and everything beyond that was just grace. She'd survived, she'd healed, she'd transformed. And that night at Cristallo, the night that had felt like the end of everything, had actually been the beginning. The beginning of Elena Cross learning to take up space again, to speak up, to choose herself. To recognize that love shouldn't hurt and control isn't care, and she deserved better than she'd been accepting. She'd learned, she'd grown, she'd become. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.